Hey guys, my name is Alan. Today I want to tell you about my job. The only job I've ever had in my life, and for sure, one of the most dangerous jobs there is. I'm a truck driver. I'm sure you can imagine how difficult my job is and why it's so dangerous. I have to drive the truck for many hours, almost always without sleep and in a hurry, and to make it worse, in the dark. Apart from the fear of crashing or falling asleep at the wheel, people always ask me if I have any stories to tell, if I saw any ghosts or any strange occurrences while driving that endangered my life. Fortunately for them, I always have a story to tell them. I may not have fought any ghosts or beings from another planet, but this was a real danger. A danger that you, I, and anyone else may have experienced. That night, I was driving with my companion, Randy, a fellow I'd known my whole life, who decided to accompany me on his day off. Randy had just gotten divorced, and since he had no kids, he didn't have much to do. He was a good man, nice, pleasant, and entertaining, but he did talk his head off.
Hey, are you sure you don't want to stop for a drink? I'm driving, Randy. You know I can't have anything to drink. Well, at least have a coffee and I'll have a beer. We did that at the last stop. Are you trying to sabotage me? You're technically competition. Hey, look at that.
As I looked out the window, I could see a large number of police cars passing me. They seemed to be in a hurry, as if looking for someone.
Be careful. Maybe they're coming for you. For me. In any case, they were coming for you. Surely you didn't murder your ex-wife while you were drunk. Nah, she's more likely to murder me. I should be worried. I hope you have a good lawyer. Hey, there's some trees here. Can you stop the truck? Why? I had too much beer, man. You know. Are you peeing yourself again? Yep. Okay, man. I guess I can stop driving for a while, too.
I stopped the truck, and Randy started to walk into the trees, getting more lost.
Randy, what are you doing? Have you become selective with the trees? I can't pee if you're looking at me. What makes you think I'd like to see you? I don't know, and I don't want to take the risk. Surely no one believes him when he says he's a truck driver.
Seconds passed, and Randy didn't come back. At first, I thought it was funny. He really should have been hanging on for a long time. But when the first minutes started to pass, I started to worry.
Hey, Randy? You there? You're gonna flood the forest. Hey, man, are you there?
Randy didn't answer me, and I started to worry. He wasn't drunk enough to pass out. He had barely been drinking, but maybe he ran into a wild animal or tripped and hurt himself on the trail. I grabbed my flashlight and went down to look for my friend. With the flashlight on, I walked into the forest. How far could he have gone?
Randy, where are you?
As if in answer to my call, I heard a voice coming from a tree. At that moment, I didn't realize that this voice didn't belong to my friend and that I should have never gone to her.
Over here.
I approached where the voice was coming from, and it belonged to a girl. She was against a tree, full of blood and scared. I rushed to her aid, but I saw a knife in her hands, and I took a step back.
Hey, lady, what happened to her? Are you hurt?
I couldn't help it.
What couldn't be helped? Do you need assistance? I can call an ambulance from here. The nearest hospital is several miles away.
I just couldn't help it. I'm sick of it. But when you see them, it's so tempting.
What are you talking about?
Without any difficulty, the girl stood up with the knife firmly in her hand and stared at me for the first time.
The police are out to get me, and I can't blame them. I know I'm doing something wrong, but I can't help it. I don't want to kill anymore. But when I have someone in front of me, I just want to kill them.
Lady, you're scaring me. Put the knife down.
Nail my knife into his body. Feel his ribs break. The noise to the flesh when it's pierced. and the blood that starts coming out like a fountain of water.
Lady, you are not wounded. That's not your blood, is it?
I need to do it. One more time. One more time, and I promise this will be the last. I know I say this all the time, but I promise. With you, I will stop!
The woman lunged violently at me, but before she could thrust the knife into me, I grabbed her arm and threw her. She hit a tree, and with a huge smile, she ran into the forest, losing sight of me. Did she run away? No. She just didn't want me to see her so she could attack me again when I was unprepared. I could hear the sound of the grass, of the plants. She was close by. I ran to my truck, but on the way, I found something I didn't want to see. Randy's body was already lifeless in a tree. It was his blood running down the body of that crashed woman.
Randy, no!
Suddenly, I heard a noise in the grass near me. The woman lunges at me again with the knife in her hands, but filled with anger and sadness for my friend. I grab her hand again and stop her. We both struggled, but it was clear that I had the upper hand.
Look at my friend! Look what you did to him, you monster! He was a good man. Sure, he could stop you, and he didn't because you're a woman! I'm not that good!
I was about to pull the knife out of her, but without my expecting it, all my resistance ended when she kicked me in the crotch. I fell to the ground, exhausted and full of pain.
So you were a good person. I'm sorry. I didn't want to kill you. I always looked for a good person in my life. I'm sorry.
Was she talking to my dead friend? I got up to see what was going on, and when I did, I almost threw up. The woman was kissing Randy's corpse, while with her hand, she was still sticking the knife into him.
You're crazy! You're completely crazy!
Without paying attention to me, the woman's kisses turned into bites. I turned and ran as fast as I could, while from a distance, I watched as this woman ate my friend's face, only stopping to scream.
I'm sorry!
I got into the truck, and as I started it up, I called the police. That night, I never heard from her again. Shortly thereafter, the police contacted me to recognize my friend's body. Apparently, the police arrived very quickly. They were nearby as they were looking for Aurora, the girl who tried to kill me. When they arrived, she was still with Randy's body, eating it. When I talked with the police and told them the whole story, they were disgusted, but they weren't surprised at all. Apparently, this was the way she used to act. That same night, there were reports that she was seen where I made my last stop with Randy. She had gotten into the back of our truck and tried to get away, but the temptation to kill us came over her. The police told me that all the guilt she felt was acted out. She was a psychopath, incapable of emotion or empathy, but she loved to pretend she did. The only thing that was real about that encounter was her desire for human flesh, as she had vorophilia, a paraphilia that causes those who have it to feel the need to eat or be eaten by humans. The police tried to explain to me many other technicalities of Aurora's story, but I was not interested in knowing anything else. After I was a witness in the trial, I never got involved in the subject again. From that day on, I never stopped my truck at night, and when I did, it was always in a crowded place. I would never again expose myself to being alone at night, at the mercy of someone who wanted to harm me or my loved ones. OnlyFans used to be such a popular platform. It used to be a place where models could make a lot of money by posting videos and pictures for their fans. Maybe it was still like this for the really popular models, but not for me. I've used this platform for years, but never really made that much money. I was always just kind of scraping by. Recently, things had gotten even worse. My subscriber count was dwindling, and I was barely making enough to pay my bills. I had to do something to make some quick cash, and one day, a subscriber sent me a message that gave me a brilliant idea. Why not mesh my love for horror movies with my OnlyFans account? I could create horror stories that my subscribers could pay to watch. See, I'd mentioned my love for horror stories on my OnlyFans page before, and some of my loyal fans still knew that I loved all things horror.
Why don't you use your love for horror to make some extra cash? It's a unique business model that you could totally cash in on. Seductive horror flicks that only your subscribers like me have access to.
I read the message over and over again, and it finally clicked. That's exactly what I would do. I would create horror stories for my fans to enjoy for a price. The first few films were really basic, just some scary, shaky movie shots paired with my alluring nature. But soon, I decided to up the ante and make things more interactive. I started filming with other people, and we would act out horror scenes from some of my subscribers' fantasies. Things were going really great at first. My subscribers were loving the new content, and I was making more money than ever before. But then one day, things took a turn for the worse. It was the day I received another message from the original subscriber who had suggested the whole idea.
Do you think I could be a part of one of your horror films? I have some great ideas.
I responded with a simple,
Sure.
not thinking much of it. I mean, what harm could it do? But little did I know that this fan had something much more sinister in mind. We first met up at a Starbucks in my town. As I sat down at the table, I noticed the man in front of me was slightly pudgy with an unkempt beard. He was definitely not my type, but I didn't want to be rude. We talked for a bit, and he told me some of his ideas for the film. They were all really dark and twisted, and I have to admit that they did give me the chills. But that is what horror is really about, right?
I've got quite a lot of expensive camera equipment. We could use my place to film too. I'm a part-time landlord, so I've got an empty apartment that we could use.
I mulled it over for a bit. His ideas were good and his offer was tempting, but something inside me just didn't feel right. I had a bad feeling about this whole thing, but I couldn't shake it. Still, I ended up saying yes. Big mistake. We started filming that very night, and things were going great at first. The dude actually had a really cool setup, and the entire process was going well, until I received a notification on my phone. Why are you streaming this on OnlyFans? I thought you were making a movie. I stared at the message on my phone, confused.
What's the matter, sweet? Is everything okay? We only have a few more scenes.
Are we streaming this, Darren?
As I stared at him, a change came over his face. Anger filled every crevice of his being, and he slammed his hand on the door of the apartment.
Who told you? Who told you I was streaming this?
Before I could answer, he lunged at me, and everything went black. I woke up tied to a chair with a bright light shining on my face. I squinted against the light, trying to make out where I was. It looked like I was in some sort of basement. And then I saw him, Darren. He was sitting in a chair across from me, holding my phone.
Now, the real horror movie is going to begin, my sweet. My kitten, my model. You're going to be the star of a real horror movie, darling. I'll cut you loose now. Try to escape if you can.
He released me from the chair and I tried to run, but he was already behind me, his hand wrapping around my throat. He flung me to the ground, all the while holding his camera and pointing it at me.
And action.
I stumbled to my feet and ran away from him, but he was right behind me, laughing maniacally the whole time. He chased me through the basement, and I could hear his heavy breathing as he ran after me. I was about to give up. I stumbled to a halt, but I heard him panting behind me, a knife in his hand as he ran with the camera in the other.
Where do you think you're going? The show's just getting started.
I turned around to face him, and that's when I saw it. The glint of the knife in the light, the madness in his eyes, and then he was upon me, stabbing me over and over as I screamed for help. The last thing I remember was him holding me close as I bled out, the camera still rolling the whole time. When I woke up, I was tied to a chair again. I felt numb all over, and my vision was blurred. I could hear Darren's voice, but it sounded distant.
It's lucky I didn't get too carried away, isn't it? We still need a promo video, don't we, my sweet?
I saw Darren's sickly face in front of me, a grin spreading across his fat cheeks as he watched me. Looking down, I saw my bloodied body, roughly bandaged up in an attempt to keep me alive. He stood above me, his grin on his face and a camera still in his hand as he cackled in my face, and he taunted me again and again, making fun of me each time I felt myself drifting to the edge of reality. I could feel myself fading, feel myself slipping away as I complied with his demands and did everything he told me to.
Don't worry, the pain will go away soon. If you don't want me to make it worse, though, you'll do as I say.
Now, if you're watching this, it means that Darren has uploaded the video of my murder to OnlyFans. And if you're a subscriber, then you're one of the lucky ones who gets to see it. When I was younger, Valentine's Day used to be my favorite date of the year. My girlfriend and I had been dating for over 3 years, and things were going great. This year, I had a lot of plans for Valentine's Day, but something would come between me and my girlfriend. It started 2 days before Valentine's Day. Samantha hadn't answered my messages all day, which I thought was weird. I was about to go to her house, but suddenly she answered me. She told me she overslept, so she didn't go to work either. I offered to go see her, but she said no. Let's meet directly on Valentine's Day. At first, her messages seemed strange to me. They had a lot of spelling mistakes, which was unnatural for her. But I assumed she had just woken up, and she told me a few days before her cell phone was not working the best way. The next day went by pretty fast. I spent the day working, and Sam responded to me at very random times. She was acting weird. Did something happen to her? I decided not to insist too much, since the next day I would go to see her in the morning. When the sun came up, I got ready as I could finally see her. I put on the best perfume I had, bought her flowers and chocolates, and with a smile, I went to her house. No matter what was happening to Samantha, this day was going to be sensational. As I was arriving at her house, I received a message from Samantha. The message said that she was going to take a shower and that she left the front door open. I was surprised at how reckless she was, but I just went along with it. As I entered the house, I saw that the bathroom door was closed and there was a noise coming from behind it into the shower, so I sat down to wait for her. Suddenly, the door opened and steam came out of the bathroom, but instead of meeting my girlfriend, someone else appeared. A white, scrawny, and very tall man came out of the bathroom wearing my girlfriend's underwear. But the worst thing, what surprised me the most, was his face. That wasn't his face. He had pieces of skin stuck all over his face. It was probably sealed with a very strong glue, since the man walked with extreme tranquility without the skin falling off. Not only was the skin glued, but also the hair. But I recognized that golden hair. That was Samantha's hair.
Who are you? Where's Samantha?
What are you saying, Roy? I am Samantha. Can't you see my face? Don't you like me anymore?
My first impulse was to run as fast as I could to the door, but it wasn't going to happen. This man was a little closer, so at a great speed he arrived first, and with his body he covered the door.
Hey, my love, have you forgotten yourself at home? Why are you so upset?
You psycho! Where's Sam?
Enraged, it seems that the man didn't like my comment. So furious, he jumped at me and grabbed my head with his two huge hands, shouting at me, face to face.
What part don't you understand that I am Sam? Have you forgotten about me? Did you hit your head coming in? You know what? I'd kill you for questioning your girlfriend, but I'll spare your life for now, just because you brought me my favorite chocolates. Stay here while I change, honey. I'll be back in a while.
When the man closed the door and left me in the dark, before I could get up to turn on the light, I felt something strange next to me, like wet. Suddenly, a horrible smell came up my nose. It was disgusting. I felt like I was going to vomit at any moment. I held my nose, and in desperation, I went to turn on the light in the basement. On the way, I felt many insects hitting my face. I knew what this meant, but I didn't want to assume it, so I wanted to avoid it as much as possible. When I turned on the light, I couldn't avoid reality for another second. That was Samantha's body. The body was decomposing. Around Sam, flies seemed to be feasting. As if it wasn't enough, many parts of her face and body were disfigured or skinless. What that psycho was wearing on his face was really Samantha's face. I fell to my knees on the floor, and almost ignoring the disgusting smell that didn't let me breathe, I cried as hard as I could. After a few seconds of wailing, I tried to open the door as hard as I could. I was always a small man, strength was never my thing, and even at that moment, I felt totally useless. I was facing a simple wooden door, crying, while a man was putting on my girlfriend's clothes, who was already behind me, decomposing. I felt pathetic, and I was. From 1 second to the next, the door opened, but not because I forced it, but because the man had returned.
I'm back, honey.
You!
Ahead of me, knocking me down with absurd ease, the man who killed my girlfriend was standing in front of me. That man was wearing Samantha's favorite skirt with a black top that he couldn't even finish zipping up.
Hey, I understand that you're very upset, but let me explain what happened. This man came into my house and tried to kill me. He told me he was watching you on the street, always dreaming of being your partner. Can you believe it? He came with the intention of killing me and pretending to be me. What a psycho.
Furious, I stood up and lunged at him again. But again, it was pointless. The man grabbed me by the neck before I could hit him, and with one hand he lifted me up, only to throw me against Sam's corpse.
Hey, honey, you shouldn't be so upset. I wasn't going to let this man come between us. I killed him as soon as I saw him. You should have heard how he screamed. It was delicious. His screams still sound in my head. What an exquisite melody. I assure you, he suffered a lot before he died. You see, honey, I couldn't pass up an exquisite sound like that. So before I killed him, I tortured him. I made sure he survived until the last second he could feel pain. Anyway, honey, are we going to a nice restaurant?
Ah!
I had made it. I had escaped. I ran to the door, crying and preparing to tell the police everything. But something in me was wrong. All my fear, helplessness, and sadness turned into hatred. Pure hatred towards the monster that had taken away the most important thing in my life. Instead of running away, I turned to him. He was still alive, and confused, he spoke to me.
My love, I don't feel good. I think you hurt me.
You are not my love. You are not Samantha. You took her from me. She's never coming back because of you.
When I finished, I just fell on the floor and started crying, in shock because of everything that had happened. When the police came, I was arrested for double homicide, but after the truth came out, I was released. After that, I could never be in a couple again. I never felt I could open my heart to someone else and experience anything like that again. Every Valentine's Day is torture. Torture where in my nightmares I relive everything that happened that day. I recently started therapy. I hope someday to be able to heal, but in the meantime, I spend Valentine's Day locked up and alone, trying to face my memories.
Ever heard of the SCP Foundation? You know, the fictional universe where they supposedly have trapped many monsters and strange beings. In case you have, how would you feel if I told you it was real? Well, to tell you the truth, I don't know if it really exists, but after experiencing what I experienced that Friday afternoon in an IKEA, I refuse to believe that these are just internet stories. Some of it has to be true. It all started several years ago. I was still small and knew nothing about SCP, conspiracies, monsters, or the internet. That day, my parents took me to IKEA, and I'm not gonna lie, I was really bored. I started walking around IKEA while my parents were asking for a couch, and I remember something caught my attention. I came across an aisle that stretched way too far. There was furniture everywhere, but no one was looking. I started walking and walking until the front door was almost out of sight. When would the hallway end? I had to find out, so I just kept going.
Ace! What do you think you're doing here? What did I tell you about sneaking out while Mom and Dad are shopping?
I'm sorry, Mom.
Do you know what can happen if you get lost? You can get caught by a bad man, or even a monster. Would you rather be with a monster than with Mom and Dad?
No, Mom. I'm sorry.
I knew there was no such thing as monsters, but I still nodded. My mom started walking with me in the direction of my dad, but I needed to know what was at the end of that huge hallway. I started to walk slower and slower until my mom passed me, and at that moment, I took the opportunity to turn around. As soon as I saw that my mom had gained some distance, I ran as fast as I could. I was back on track. After going a few seconds ahead, I got tired and stopped. I assumed my mother would be behind me, furious, putting her hands on her hips apprehensively as she always did. But no, there was no one behind me. I looked back and could no longer see the entrance to the IKEA, nor could I see my parents, other customers, salespeople, nothing. Somewhat confused, I kept walking forward, hoping to at least find another exit. I walked and walked, at times even ran. How many minutes had passed? How could this place be so big? I was breathing harder and harder and getting more and more nervous. I was alone in a harmless IKEA, well lit and safe, but at the same time, something was wrong. As if something inside me was telling me that I was in danger. When I felt I was about to start crying, something filled me with calmness and hope. I saw an IKEA employee with his back turned. He wasn't doing anything. He was just standing there looking at some appliances.
Sir, I think I'm lost.
The man had no face. Terrified, I started walking backwards. He just followed me at a very slow pace, but without stopping. I ran and ran as much as I could. Many times I thought I had lost him, but I could only see him far away, walking with tranquility that terrified me. Time passed and I could see that he was getting closer and closer to me. Was he walking faster? No, I was getting tired. Exhausted and full of fear, I fell to the ground. The being dressed in IKEA stood in front of me, and when I had already given up, he simply did nothing. He just stood there, watching me, without reacting. It won't do anything to you, kid. It's still daytime. They only attack at night.
Who are you?
You're lost, aren't you? This place is not for children.
Where are we?
In IKEA, I guess. I've been here for months and I still haven't found my way out, but I think I'm close. It must be around here somewhere. There are a lot of people like us. Follow me.
But I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I want to be with my mom and dad.
Mommy and Daddy are not here, child. Come with me or you'll die.
Attention. We ask that the last customers go to the cashier area. Our business hours are now closed.
Not good. I have to go. I'm sorry, kid. You would have been a burden anyway. Sir, this area is for employees only. I'm gonna ask you to leave. It was another faceless IKEA employee. It was identical to the previous one, but this one looked different. He was much more aggressive. His voice was scary and dry, but the weirdest thing was he didn't have a mouth either. What was he talking about? You brat! You brought them! The teenager tried to hit the IKEA employee, but it was useless. From 1 second to the next, with a slight movement of the hand, the monster snapped the teenager's neck, who fell lifeless to the ground. I didn't have time to see the scene, as the monster, along with 2 others that appeared behind him, were looking at me. I'm sorry, sir. This is not customer service hours. Come with us. We will have to take you to the exit. As I said these words, the 3 of them approached me, but not like the other one had done before. This time, they were walking fast, so fast that it looked like they were running. Their distorted faces seemed to be in motion as if they were changing shape with every second, and their hands, their veiny hands, were hardened. It was as if they were ready to grab my little neck and do the same to me as they did to the teenager. I ran as fast as I could. I spun around. Somehow I had to lose them. Nothing worked. They were still behind me. I had turned around so many times that I had no idea where they were. I hid behind an oven and saw some men passing by. I think I lost them. I looked at them while they were leaving, and something caught my attention. There were only 2 of them. Where was the 3rd one? Sir, by being here, you are violating our work rules. This is a forbidden area. My body hurt a lot, and the man had not finished his attack. He was coming at high speeds towards me. Crying, I looked for something to defend myself, but there was nothing. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. When the man was only a few steps away, I realized that there was a door behind me. Was it covered by the appliances? With the last bit of strength I had left, I opened the door and got in. That was the exit door. Suddenly, I was outside the IKEA. There were people walking around and cops nearby. Hey, I found him! He's here! Everything happened very fast. From 1 second to the next, I had several policemen near me grabbing me. They took me to my parents, who came running a few meters away. Between tears and reprimands, my parents told me all sorts of things, but I don't remember anything. I just fell asleep, and after that, I only remember being in the hospital with a broken arm. I spent years without talking or investigating the subject. When I was older, I was encouraged to investigate, and to my surprise, I was not the only one who lived through what I lived. Apparently, there was a fictitious foundation that investigated these anomalies, and the IKEA was one called SCP-3008. This may have bothered me a lot when I was young, but to tell you the truth, I don't care anymore. Every time I remember what I experienced that day, I don't want anyone to believe me or ask me what had happened. I will never set foot in an IKEA again in my life. I inherited my grandmother's old house after she passed away. After a lot of arguments and discussions, my parents permitted me to stay there. The reason they were reluctant at first was because of what happened to my great-uncle Frank while he stayed in that house. Uncle Frank was my grandmother's only brother. He and my grandma grew up together. Uncle Frank was a pretty healthy, normal guy, a popular boy in high school, had plenty of friends. Maybe that's why no one saw it coming. Uncle Frank had a crush on a classmate. Her name was May. A day before prom, Uncle Frank finally gathered the courage to ask out May for the prom, but May rejected him. This is where the story takes a dark turn. It's said that Uncle Frank didn't handle the rejection well and kidnapped May on prom night. He brought her into this house and took her to the kitchen. While my grandma and her parents slept upstairs, Great Uncle Frank severed May's head from her body and ran away. According to the reports of the locals, some anonymous caller told the cops about seeing a teenage boy dressed in a tuxedo jumping off the river bridge. May's headless body was discovered in the kitchen along with a big, bloody kitchen knife, and my uncle's body was never found. No one knows what happened to May's head. The people around the town say my uncle had her head with him while he committed suicide. So it was more than enough reason for my parents to prevent me from living in that house. But after this incident, my grandmother lived alone in this house all these years, and not once did she talk about anything weird happening to her. Within a week, I moved into the house. My parents got me some paint and basic repair tools to set up the house. One warm summer afternoon, I was working in the kitchen. I was scraping the dirty paint off the wall when I suddenly heard footsteps behind me. I quickly turned around to see no one. The long, empty hallway stood behind me. I didn't bother. Even though I ignored the footsteps, I couldn't ignore the thud. I grabbed the hammer and headed up. The sound came from my grandma's bedroom. I pushed the door and it opened with a loud creaking sound. The room was in darkness. Even though it was daytime, the big curtains over the windows stopped the light outside from piercing in.
Hello? Anyone here?
I scanned the room and got sure that no one was there. The rest of the day, the weird feeling of not being alone stayed with me. After a tiresome day, I filled myself with leftover lasagna and went to bed. I decided to sleep in my grandma's bedroom as it had the biggest window. I left the window open, curtains are drawn to one corner of the room to cool down. I don't exactly remember the time, but I woke up hearing heavy breathing. The moonlight from the window made the room visible in the dark. As I looked around me, my eyes suddenly noticed the curtains. A head was peeking behind the curtains, looking directly at me. It had wide, glowing eyes and its mouth opened. I've never been that scared in my whole life. Whatever was watching me sleep behind the curtains wasn't supposed to be in my room. The glowing eyes didn't blink. I couldn't scream. All I knew was that I locked my room before coming in, and it was impossible for someone to get in from that window. The creature made a growl, and I got back to my senses. I screamed and jumped from the bed. Without wasting a single second, I unlocked the door and ran downstairs. The entire night, I remained awake, sitting in the living room. In the morning, I checked the entire room and didn't find any proof of a third-person presence in the house. Soon, I started to believe that the house is probably haunted. I didn't tell my parents anything because I have already invested money in this house and I can't move out. Many times, I've seen in movies that a deceased soul tortures the living because they want to convey a message. Long back, my cousin gave me a Ouija board. I knew it was risky and to some people makes no sense, but that evening I sat down in my grandma's room to get some answers. I turned all the lights of the shadow, lit up the candles, and started the seance.
Is anyone here?
My voice trembled. Except for the hooting owl and crickets outside, I heard nothing. The wind around the house never felt this heavy before. I sat in the dark, waiting for something supernatural to happen, thinking that the malevolent entity that visited me last night might reappear to give its message. Maybe it's the unfulfilled spirit of May who was murdered in this house at the prom night. Minutes went by and nothing happened. I was all set to give up when I watched the closet door open. A clattering sound came from inside, and then I saw the entity from last night. An average-height human figure, extremely skinny like it was only made of bones coming out of the closet. It walked like a four-legged animal. The sight gave me chills. I was going to scream when I noticed the dark figure with glowing eyes holding something in its hand. As it surfaced into the dim candlelight, I found out what it was holding. A human skull. Suddenly, the creature ran to me at full speed. I screamed, and it lunged at me, making me fall on the floor. I turned on the flashlight of my phone, and at last, got a good look at the creature. It was a miserable, creepy-looking old man.
Oh my god! Who are you?
The man looked at me in the eyes and said in a groggy voice,
"Where is my sister?"
Who is your sister?
Matilda.
Matilda was my grandmother's name. The mystery of the haunted house became clear in front of my eyes. This man is none other than my great-uncle Frank. I pushed him over and he fell on the ground, making a painful grunt. I ran out of the room and locked it behind me. I called my parents and they called the cops. A decades-old murder investigation finally reached its end. Great Uncle Frank was finally put behind bars for the murder of May Summers, his high school crush. He admitted that after killing May and was caught by my grandma in the act. But what shocked the hell out of all of us was the fact that Grandma, instead of calling the cops, hid his brother in the attic. Once the case turned cold, she built a secret space behind the walls of her bedroom where Uncle Frank stayed all these years. She was the anonymous caller who misled the entire investigation to save her brother. It creeps me out to think that till her death, she shared the house with her killer brother, who lived in the walls and kept his victim's skull as an asset. Yes, that skull belonged to May Summers. Great Uncle Frank died in jail 2 years after getting caught. We demolished the house and sold it to a proprietor of a law firm. I now live in my own house with my girlfriend, but often at night I wake up having bad dreams. In my dreams, I see my uncle standing near my bed and staring at me with his flowing eyes and wide open mouth. This happened during my struggling years. I had just moved out, working in a car wash. I lived in a small studio apartment. The apartment had no air conditioning. In the summers, the room used to get pretty heated up. Also, the constant worries about how the new life will turn out to be kept me awake. One night, I wasn't able to sleep due to previous reasons, so I decided to go for a night stroll. All the tenants in my building had their keys to the main entrance. Needless to say, the neighborhood was sketchy, and random robbery was an everyday occurrence in the area, so we had to lock the main door after leaving or entering the building. It was 2 a.m. and late enough, but I was young and needed some fresh air. I came out of the building and started walking by the sidewalks. The streets were mostly empty, with some addicts and homeless people passing out in the dark corner. A woman was eating from the garbage when she looked up, hearing my footsteps. She was clawing at a half-eaten sandwich, which had maggots crawling all over it. It wasn't my first time seeing someone eat from a dumpster. I ignored her and she went back to her sick picnic. Once in a while, cars drove by, but it was mostly quiet, accompanied by the night sounds. After walking for 10 minutes straight, I reached the city park. Thinking it would be better to kill time in the park than wander on these streets, I entered. The full moon illuminated the park quite well. Also, the light from the lamppost created a spooky atmosphere. I was sure that there was no one in the park except me until I saw a man sitting on a park bench. The bench was right under the lamppost, hence I could see the man. His head was down like he was sleeping. He wore a brown jacket, paired with oddly red leather pants. From his attire, he didn't seem like the other homeless people, so I thought he came for some air, just like me. There was a water fountain across the park, and I was thinking of visiting that, so I walked ahead. I was probably inches away from walking past him when he suddenly lifted his head to the sky. I stopped. His eyes were wide open, and he was staring at the clear night sky. Suddenly, he smiled and started counting the stars like a 9-year-old. He was pointing his fingers to each star and counting in a whispering voice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The way he was smiling and counting the stars and looking at the sky kind of creeped me out. Not once, he looked at me. He behaved as if I didn't exist at that moment. I thought he must be high, so I walked past him. No sooner I stepped ahead, I heard a crunching noise behind me, like someone stepping on a twig. Turning around, I saw the man had now stood up from the bench. His arms were stretched out. He was still staring at the sky. "Hey, are you all right?" I asked in a fearful voice. I could feel the lump of tension curling up in my throat. What the hell is wrong with this dude? The man chuckled. Then the traveler in the dark thanks you for your tiny spark. He could not see which way to go if you did not twinkle so. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. And then he stopped and faced me. Our eyes met, and I got a clear glimpse of his face. I'd never seen such a calm yet scary face in my life. He had this blank stare that pierced into my soul. I couldn't stand him anymore. It was time to go back home. Standing in this stranded city park with a creepy, strange man that too, at this hour of the night, made me terrified for my life. I increased my pace and was constantly looking back to see if the man was following me, but he was standing under the lamppost, still watching me walk away. When I was about to leave the park, the sound of footsteps gave me goosebumps. As I turned around, I saw the man running at me at full speed. An ear-to-ear grin had now altered his calm face to a cruel one. I started running as well. I left the park and went on the sidewalks. The man did the same. There wasn't a single person on the street whom I could ask for help. I just kept running. I grabbed the keys beforehand because I knew if he catches me, that will be the end of my life. What seemed more horrifying was the fact that he was just running with a scary smile, not yelling, not laughing, not saying a single thing, just running behind me like he was enjoying this cat and mouse chase. I stomped on the building entrance. The key was in my hand. The man was behind me, and my hands were trembling. I went to unlock the door and the key fell. I panicked but quickly picked it up. The man was inches away when I succeeded in opening the door and slammed it hard once I got in. I was out of breath and drenched in sweat. The man stopped right outside the building door. The door was the only thing between us creating separation. He was still staring at me with his hawk eyes. I was so stunned with panic and fear that my legs went numb. I too kept standing there, staring at him. He brought his face extremely close to the glass and said in a spine-chilling voice, "You are pretty. I bet you have a pretty scream." And then he walked away. His creepy singing echoed into the night. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world, so high, like a diamond in the sky. That was the last time I ever left the house at night alone. I never saw that man again. I'm still living in the same neighborhood, though I have changed the apartment. Often at night when I can't sleep, this most terrifying incident of my life keeps coming back to me. Scary singing man, I hope we never meet again.
At the beginning of my career, I once shared this small apartment with a girl named Joy. The day this incident happened, Joy and I was eating pizza, lying in bed and watching Purge on my laptop. We were so into the movie that we jumped when someone rang the doorbell.
Jesus! Who is it now? I'll go check.
I got up and walked through the door. I looked through the eye hole and saw an average height, healthy-looking man standing outside. He was a fireman. Thinking it might have been some emergency in the building, I answered the door.
Yes, is everything all right?
The man stared at me with a blank face.
I need to check your gas pipeline, part of a routine check for building safety.
Oh, so Mrs. Williams sent you?
Yes.
What's going on?
I heard Joy's voice. She came out and saw me talking to this fireman. I told her everything, and she told them, the firemen, that she will first contact Mrs. William for confirmation.
Hi, Mrs. William, it's Joy. Did you send someone for a routine gas pipe check?
Yes, just some casual formalities. He won't take long, though.
Oh, okay, thanks.
We moved out of the door and let the man in. He didn't say anything, just gave us a weird smile. Joy and I went back to our room. We just waited for the man to get done and leave.
You know, Mrs. Williams sounded strange. What? Why do you say that? Her voice was odd. She even hiccuped and
I started laughing.
Come on, Joy. You're overthinking a small incident. The poor lady might not be feeling well. She is 76. Maybe you're right.
We started watching the movie again and kept hearing the sound of tools rattling in the kitchen. After a time, we got restless from the fireman taking so long and thinking about what to do when we heard him calling out to us.
Ma'am? Ma'am?
Both of us walked fast, thinking finally he was about to leave. But as we stepped into the living room, we saw another man in the apartment dressed exactly like the fireman, locking our door from the inside.
I needed a little help here, so I called my partner.
Now, I could feel drops of sweat on my forehead. The man didn't even bother to ask for our permission before inviting another guy into our apartment. The second guy now looked at me. We locked eyes, and he grinned, flashing yellow teeth. A pungent smell of tobacco and cheap alcohol was coming from his clothes. Joy looked at me. She was scared as well.
How long would it take?
Just a few minutes more.
I stood there, having no clue. Joy started dialing back for Mrs. William when suddenly the second guy hiccuped and said,
Yeah.
Can I have some water, ma'am?
Joy grabbed my hand tightly. Her body was shaking. The call to Mrs. William kept on ringing and no one picked up.
It was him. He took the previous call pretending to be Mrs. William.
As soon as we realized what grave danger we have invited in, our lives flashed in front of our eyes.
Why don't you guys come tomorrow? We need to go out.
It won't take long, miss.
Yeah, we'll be done in no time.
Suddenly, they both lunged in our direction. The second fireman, who was taller and stronger built, went to grab me, and I turned around to run inside the bedroom. He got a tight hold of my hair. Still, I gave all my strength to pull away. He ripped a good patch of hair with skin and blood.
Run, Joy!
I screamed and ran. Joy was too stunned to move at first, but then she also turned back to run. I got inside the bedroom and Joy followed me. She was halfway in when both men pulled her from behind, and I had no choice but to close the door.
No! No! Leave me! Let me go, you jerks!
I could hear Joy's cry for help, and the two men grunted.
Tie her hands and gag her mouth. Her screams will get us in trouble.
I'm trying. The witch won't stop moving.
Help! Help! Help!
Hey, shut up. Shut your damn mouth.
That's when I heard a punch take place, and Joy's voice died down. I realized they had just knocked out my roommate, and now they were going to come for me. I dialed 911, and the operator picked up.
911, what's your emergency?
We're getting attacked by these two men. They just hurt my friend, and now they're coming for me.
Okay, don't worry, the cops will be at your location in no time. Just give me the address.
It's 33 Rodeo Block, 12th Street. Please help us.
That's when the loud banging began.
Open the damn door, or we'll torture your friend so much that you will hear her pleading for death.
Open the door.
They were kicking and punching the door. At one point, I even thought they would break it down. I was scared, paranoid, and almost ready to jump out of the window, but I couldn't leave Joy.
They're trying to get in. I have to open the door, or they're going to kill my friend.
Calm down. Listen to me. Do you see any sharp objects near you?
I'm inside the bedroom. There's a bed, laptop, and pizza, that's all. All the knives are in the kitchen.
Did you say pizza?
Please do something.
The man stopped kicking on the door and threatened me one last time.
I will count to 3. If you do not open this door, I will start skinning your friend alive. 1.
What should I do?
Pour the chili flakes on your palm and open the door. Don't give them any chance and just blow the flakes onto their faces. Remember, you have to be really quick.
2. You're getting on my nerves, you stupid witch.
Joy is Mexican, so she loves spices 10 times more than me. She would always ask for extra chili flakes whenever we ordered pizza, and thank God for that day too, she did the same. I tore the packs and grabbed a handful.
3. That's it. Your friends are going to die horribly, and you will be the reason why.
Wait!
I slowly walked to the door and opened it just a little. The tall fireman inserted his head in one hand from the gap, trying to push the door, but before he could do that, I smudged his face with chili flakes. Chili seeds went inside his eyes and nostrils. He could feel the heat burning his face.
Oh! Oh, my eyes! My eyes!
What? What happened?
It's burning!
The man fell on the floor, grabbing his face. He could barely see. The first guy panicked and tried to run away when I came out of my room, pushing him with all of my strength. He fell, and I sat on him and started rubbing his face with my chili flakes hand. I just didn't care anymore. I only wanted to teach him a lesson. Seeing me fight back, Joy too got back her lost courage. She was bleeding from her broken nose, but got up, gathering her remaining strength. She ran and opened the main door.
Help us! These men are trying to kill us!
One by one, she rang all the doorbells of the apartments on our floors, and the tenants came to our rescue. When the cops took those men away, their faces were unrecognizable. It was all red and swollen, and they could barely speak. The cops also found our landlord, Mrs. William, murdered in her ground floor apartment. Seems like these two robbers pretending to be firemen entered her apartment. They killed her and decided to go on with the robbery, invading every single apartment. To make things more believable, one even stayed at Mrs. Williams just to answer calls in case any tenants doubted them. Joy and I moved out to a girls' hostel within the month. I've never opened doors to strangers while being alone in my apartment ever since. The world of OnlyFans has always caught my attention, not to consume it, but for the money that can be earned there. I have a lot of female friends who have OnlyFans, and all of them are troubled by the same things: the stalkers, the competition, and the misogyny. That always made me think, what if I opened my OnlyFans? Being a man, I wouldn't have to put up with any of this. On the platform, men are much fewer, and the women who enter OnlyFans are usually calmer. If one of them decided to harass me, I could quietly contain her, or so I thought. My success was almost instantaneous. Soon, I started to make a lot of money. I didn't even have to strip completely naked, but I was willing to do it. My only regret was that I didn't do this sooner. Or at least, that was until Gabby showed up. The day I met her, I was walking down the street and she jumped out at me. She told me her name was Gabby and that she was a big fan of mine and that she was one of the first people to send me money. I, of course, was nice to her and chatted for a while, but as I was leaving, I noticed that she kept looking at me as if she was waiting for something else to happen with that encounter. During the following days, something strange started to happen. I started receiving very violent messages from a Miss G. Some said that it was her fantasy to tie me to a bed and set me on fire. Other messages said that she wanted to beat me until she disfigured my beautiful face and then feed me to her dogs. And others said she was watching me, always. Some of them described how I was dressed and what I did that day. Others described what was going on in the privacy of my home. This person was a stalker, and although I admit I was a little afraid of her.
Miss Gabby?
For the next few days, I walked the streets a little worried, watching for anyone who might be watching me. It wasn't many days before I saw her again.
Hey, I can't believe I ran into you again.
Cut it! Who do you think you are to send me those messages? So, you're gonna set me on fire? Are you gonna feed me to the dogs?
I don't know what you're talking about. I never wrote anything like that.
Oh, come on, Miss G. Do you think I don't have a brain? Every day you send me these messages and, oh surprise, you're the only person I come across. The only person who knows where I live. If you send me one more message, I swear you'll pay for it. Understand?
Crying, Gabby just nodded and left. At that moment, I had a lot of doubts. Maybe I shouldn't have grabbed her jacket like that. I must admit, I got very upset. I was scared. However, all my doubts were cleared up when I saw Gabby from a distance. She was rubbing the part of her jacket I grabbed with her face with a sickly smile. When I got home, I decided this was no longer my ideal job. After taking a day to think about it, I decided to close my OnlyFans account for good. But a few hours after I did, my doorbell rang. For a moment, I thought it might be Gabby, but when I looked through the camera, it was a grandmother.
Excuse me, young man. I think I got lost. I was walking with my son and suddenly he was no longer there.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
You are a young and carefree boy. May I take the liberty of asking you to accompany me to look for him? I know he's nearby.
Of course. Let me get my keys.
Before I go, could I ask you for a glass of water? I'm very shocked.
Of course. Come in. I'll get you a glass right away.
I have a grandmother her age too, so I understand the desperation of losing her. I had to help this lady. As I poured the glass of water, thinking about where to go, my thoughts were interrupted when I felt cold water on my neck. Suddenly, I began to feel dizzy and lose consciousness. When I turned around, Grandma was behind me with a huge smile on her face.
You shouldn't have closed your account. I'm Miss G, but you can call me Miss Granny. Nice to meet you.
After that, I fell to the floor and hit my head, but I didn't feel anything. When I opened my eyes, I felt like I had slept for hours. I was still dizzy. I couldn't think clearly. What had they injected me with? I tried to move my body, but it did not react. This time, it wasn't because of the effects of the syringe though. I was tied up on a bed.
You finally woke up.
What you doing?
I was still having trouble speaking.
I'm just living my fantasies. I told you I was going to tie you up and set you on fire. Remember?
No.
Unfortunately, I don't have dogs to throw you to. I'm not an animal lady. I'm sorry I lied to you. What I do have is a lighter and some alcohol.
I wanna live.
Oh, don't be selfish, boy. It's enough that you closed your account without my permission.
The old woman throws some alcohol on the back of the mattress with a lighter and lights it. The fire advances very slowly. I tried to move and escape, but it was useless. My body was too weak.
Oh, are you trying to escape? That's not very polite. You know, I was going to inject you with another dose, so that you don't suffer. But as I see so much energy in you, I think I won't use it.
The fire was slowly advancing across the mattress. It was not near me, but the heat was beginning to reach my feet. In my last moments, I stared into Grandma's eyes, full of joy. But to my surprise, a silhouette was behind her.
Gabby?
When the lady turned around, a knife pierced her neck. It was Gabby.
Get away from him, witch!
Without resisting, the lady just fell to the floor.
I'm sorry I came into your house, but I saw everything. I couldn't leave you alone with her.
Thank you. Please, help me.
Quickly, Gabby slashed the knots with the knife. I was free. I jumped off the bed and, still dizzy, began to crawl out.
Hey, maybe it's not as bad as you think.
What?
You don't love me the way I love you. And that won't change, even after I've saved you. I disgust you.
Gabby. No.
But I still have a chance to stay with you forever. If we both burn together, our bodies will be one. We could be immortalized in that bed. It's already decided. You'll go back to bed, but with me.
As she said this, Gabby rushed to me and tried to lift me. I had regained some strength, but not enough to escape. She started dragging me towards the burning bed, but I found one last glimmer of hope. On my way to the bed, I grabbed the syringe from the old woman's lifeless hand and stuck it into Gabby's leg. She fell, and I began to crawl out of the house faster and faster. Behind me, Gabby refused to faint. She stood up and was limping towards my position at great speed. She was catching up, but when she was in front of me, she gave way and fell, and with my last effort, I escaped from the house. Neighbors came quickly to help me and pulled me away from the house that was beginning to burn. A few minutes later, the firemen arrived before the house burned to the ground. Gabby survived the fire, but with several burns and was about to face a murder and harassment trial. Even though she saved me, I will not forgive her for trying to kill me, so I plan to follow this trial to its conclusion. Who knows what she would do to me if she were to go free. For my part, I will never create an OnlyFans account again. If there's one thing I learned from this experience, it's that madness has no face, no gender, and no age. It can be behind anyone, and when you least expect it, it can catch up with you. Even 20 years later, I hate being in small enclosed spaces. My name is Jason, and about 20 years ago, something happened that remains vivid in my mind. I still wake up clammy, and my heart pounds as I feel the familiar presence of her next to me. Her breathing labored together with me in the darkness. I remember that day vividly. It was like any other day. Classes were dragging on, and I was eager to get out of school. But then my teacher, Mrs. Kravitz, said I had to stay after class for homework. She had always been a bit of a buzzkill, but I think her husband had gotten into a fight with her that morning. Talk about a major buzzkill. Walking back into the classroom after a phone call, her demeanor told me everything I needed to know about the rest of the day.
Jason, have you completed your homework?
Not yet, Mrs. Kravitz.
Well, then I'm afraid you'll have to stay after class today.
I tried to protest, but she wasn't having any of it. So I resigned myself to my fate and began packing up my things. As I was putting my books in my backpack, I noticed that Mrs. Kravitz was looking at me funny. It was the kind of look that told me I was in for a seriously trashy time this afternoon.
Is there something wrong, Mrs. Kravitz?
Your grades have been slipping, Jason. Do you want to be a failure?
I'm sorry, Mrs. Kravitz. I'll try harder.
See that you do. Now, let's get started on your homework.
And so we began working on my homework. The minutes turned into hours, and the hours turned into what felt like days. Mrs. Kravitz was a tough taskmaster, but I slogged through it. Finally, however, we were nearing the end of the assignment.
Just a few more problems and you'll be free to go, Jason.
Now, let me explain something about the school to you. This was a private school, see, so there were only a handful of students. And the school was located in a remote area, so there weren't any other buildings nearby. In other words, there was no one else around as I studied with Mrs. Kravitz. For this reason, the rest of the lights in the building had already been turned off, giving the entire school a bit of a creepy feeling. I wasn't paying any attention to that though, since I was just happy to be done with my homework. As I stood up to put away my things, the hallway light, which was off, suddenly turned on.
What the?
I turned to Mrs. Kravitz, but she just shrugged her shoulders.
The janitor must have left it on. Go turn it off, Jason.
Sighing, I walked out into the hallway. The light switch was several yards away, so I had to walk down the length of the hallway. As I did, I couldn't help but feel like someone was watching me. It was a feeling that gave me the creeps, but I told myself that it was just my imagination. Finally, I reached the light switch and turned it off. As I did, I heard a noise behind me. Turning around, I looked down the length of the hallway. At the very end of the hallway, a figure stood there in the dark, its silhouette illuminated by the soft light coming from the windows. Long, frazzled hair was the defining feature I could make out, along with some kind of long dress.
Who's there?
There was no answer, but the figure began walking towards me, slowly but methodically. I squirmed uncomfortably, but assured myself it was probably just one of my classmates playing a prank on me. As the silhouette neared the classroom door, however, Mrs. Kravitz poked her head out.
Jason, what are you doing out there? Get in here.
As she did, the figure sprung into action. Lurching towards Mrs. Kravitz, it grabbed her around the throat and dragged her, kicking and screaming, back into the classroom. I heard the classroom light switch flick as the room went dark, blood-curdling screams echoing through the hallway. I stood there, frozen in fear, not knowing what to do. I thought about running away, but I didn't want to leave Mrs. Kravitz behind. I also thought about going into the classroom to see if I could help her, but I was too scared. In the end, I just stood there like a deer in headlights. I don't know how long I stood there, but eventually the screams stopped. The only sound I could hear was the sound of heavy breathing coming from the classroom, and then the figure emerged from the darkness. Her face was covered in blood, and her eyes were wild. It was a girl, about my age, but I didn't recognize her. She looked at me for a moment, and I could see the madness in her eyes. Finally, my body gave way as I screamed, my voice echoing through the empty hall.
Ah! Get away from me!
Turning, I lunged down the hallway towards the exit. I could hear the girl laughing maniacally as she gave chase. My heart pounded in my chest as I turned the corner, expecting to run out of the door and into the safety of the outside world. Instead, I ran into a brick wall. The impact knocked the wind out of me, and I fell to the ground. In the terror, I had taken the wrong turn and headed deeper into the school rather than toward the exit. And then I heard her laughter, a freaky sort of cackle that sent shivers down my spine. It was the laughter of someone who is truly insane, a person on the edge of the void. I picked myself up and began to run once more, stumbling as I realized I had sprained one of my ankles in the fall. Her laughter suddenly stopped. I continued to run though, till I saw a janitor's closet. I quickly ran inside, slamming the door shut behind me and locking it. I kept the light off, silently trembling as I stayed there in the darkness. I don't know how long I was in there, but my senses began to heighten as I listened. And as I did, my heart sank as I heard the steady but heavy breathing from right next to me, inside the janitor's closet. To this day, I don't know how she got in there with me. I don't know if there was another entrance to the closet or if she simply slipped in there as I ran in. All I know is that she was in there with me and I could feel her insanity next to my body. Her breathing, her raspy breathing, it was like nails on a chalkboard. Screaming, I threw myself out of the closet and into the hallway. I sprinted towards the exit, not looking back as I heard her laughter following me.
Get the hell away from me!
I screamed those words, but I don't know if anyone heard me. Finally, I found the exit and I ran out of the school and into the parking lot where my car was parked. The door was unlocked as I had left it, and I scrambled to grab my phone and call the police. As I did, I glanced up and I saw her figure standing at the door of the school. The police told me later that she was an escapee from a mental institution. They never did catch her, at least last time I checked. To this day, I half expect her to show up at my door, that freaky cackle of hers still echoing in my ears. Hey, my name is Rob. I'm 21 years old, and unfortunately, like many other people's lives have dealt them an unfortunate turn, I have to take care of my two little brothers since our parents are no longer with us. It has been more than 2 years since the day they were involved in a tragic car accident that took their lives. That day, I had been asked to babysit my brothers. I didn't want to worry them, so I did my best to make them proud. What I didn't know was the one to be worried about was me. A drunk man hit them with his truck as they were coming back from dinner together. They died instantly. We have no other family, and I was adamantly opposed to them being orphaned and adopted. I couldn't imagine us being separated. Luckily, I had a very good freelance job and was able to support us and care for them at the same time. Besides, we were always a very wealthy family. Despite the tragedy, we were able to support ourselves as best we could. Luckily, in these 2 years my siblings helped me out a lot and even matured and grew up, but nothing could prepare them for what they were about to experience one hot summer night. To be honest, I consider it a miracle that I am here telling you this story, since there is no night where I don't wake up sweating, clutching my face, and wondering if this is a dream, since I feel that after what I lived through, I shouldn't be alive. To be exact, I can't say it happened one night. The days before that happened, something strange was happening. Every day I would wake up around 3 a.m. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but after a week, I started to get scared. I'm not very Catholic, but I knew what that time meant. That was the time of the devil, the time when paranormal activity was strongest. Every time a thought like that came into my head, I would laugh. But when I woke up at that time, I would look around in fear and feel it. I'd feel like someone was watching me, like I wasn't alone. I would turn on the lights and there was nothing, so I would go back to sleep with difficulty. Every night went on like that until one day, something strange started to happen. That night I woke up at 3:32 a.m. My shock was much greater than the other times. This time I didn't wake up randomly. I heard a noise. I opened my eyes in agitation and began to explore my room. I could swear I saw something move, but when I turned on the light, there was nothing. Had my brothers played a joke on me? The next day, I questioned them.
No, it wasn't us. Oh, so it was you. I can very easily tell when you're lying.
It wasn't us.
Don't pay attention to him. He's playing with you. What do you mean by that?
Oh, come on. We see you every night.
We're too old to fall for that stuff.
At those words, my blood froze.
What do you see during the night?
Around 3 a.m., you always open our door and stare at us.
Sometimes we pretend to be asleep and we see you making little noises to wake us up. When we open our eyes pretending that you woke us up, you run away. You don't scare us.
At that confession, I was totally perplexed. My face turned white and my mouth fell open. I knew my brothers. I knew they weren't lying this time, but I simply couldn't digest what they were telling me.
Rob, what's going on? That's you at night, isn't it?
That night, the kids slept in my bed, and come 3 a.m., I was ready. I spent that night awake and kept a huge knife by my side. I must admit that the night did not start in the best way, as at 3 a.m. sharp, the power went out in the whole block. Was this a coincidence? I grabbed a flashlight and put it next to me. A few minutes later, my body was full of caffeine and I was not sleepy at all. While the children slept, I lay there, attentive. Suddenly, I heard a loud noise coming from the other side of the house, from the children's room. It had already started. I went quickly with the flashlight and the knife and started to look. My room, the hallway, the boys' room. I found nothing. I was about to go back, disappointed, but I thought I heard a noise coming from under the bed of one of the boys. I slowly approached the bed with my knife at the ready. Every step I took filled me with anticipation. I felt that these could be the last seconds of my life. It was a nightmare I didn't want to confront, and it was getting closer and closer to becoming a reality. I reached the bed, and terrified, prepared the knife and pointed the flashlight under the bed. It was a simple bug. I went back to my room, more relieved. But when I got there, something caught my attention. My cell phone was on, and it was vibrating. I ran to it. Who could be calling me at this hour? When I opened it, an unknown number was in front of my WhatsApp box, and in our chat, there were several photo files. All those pictures were mine. There were several pictures of me sleeping on different nights, waking up at dawn, and looking confused in the dark. There were also pictures of the kids sleeping. What kind of psychopath were we dealing with? Suddenly, one last message appeared on my cell phone at that very moment. It was a new picture, whose caption read, "Hi, Rob." When I opened the picture, my heart stopped. It was a picture taken at this moment. In it, I was standing scared, looking at my cell phone. I dropped my phone and pointed behind me with the flashlight to where the picture was taken. There was nothing there. Suddenly, a voice rang next to me, startling me.
What's going on, Rob?
Get away from him!
At my scream, the face quickly went back under the bed, and in desperation, I grabbed my two brothers and pulled them out of bed. The three of us headed for the door, escaping as quickly as possible from that room. but something caught my foot and I fell to the floor, dropping my knife and the flashlight. My brothers turned around and, frightened, looked at me.
What are you waiting for? Get out of the house and tell a neighbor to call the police, now!
When the children obeyed me, I turned around, and above me, with my knife in his hand, was my attacker. Although it was difficult because of the darkness, this time I could make him out better. His whole body was covered. His mask was terrifying, and it was so close to his body that it looked like his own face. The man raised my knife in front of me, and when he did, I knew it was over. Every second felt like minutes. I felt like my whole life flashed before my eyes. I was defeated. I had no strength to resist, and it was all over.
It's payback time, Rob.
Payback?
When the man raised his gun, I heard a new sound that left me shocked. The man was no longer in front of me, but on the ground, lying next to me unconscious. Behind me, my older brother was agitated, holding a broken baseball bat in his hands. My brothers disobeyed me. Instead of running away, they just reached for a weapon to save themselves. When this guy woke up a few minutes later, the police had already handcuffed him. A little later, I found out who this man was. His father was under arrest as he was the one who drove drunk and killed my parents. Can you believe that after leaving my brothers orphaned, his son thought he should take revenge on us because his father had been arrested? Clearly, both father and son were totally insane and were now imprisoned. Since that day, my brothers and I are closer than ever. They're older now and need me less and less. We still live together. We are a team and we take care of each other. We lived through enough tragedies. We will never let anyone mess with us again. I don't know how to tell this story. Very few people in life get the chance to witness something this horrible as I did that night. I was driving home from an office party. I was a little drunk and feeling tipsy. At one point, I almost dozed off behind the steering wheel when a loud honk of a pickup truck scared the bejesus out of me. I realized this is high time to stop for food and a strong cup of coffee, but after driving for half an hour, I didn't find any fast food chains or restaurants. I was losing hope when I noticed a 7-Eleven store down the road. I stopped right in front of it and with stumbling footsteps entered the store. The old cashier behind the counter was sitting with his eyes closed.
Excuse me. What?
He replied without opening his eyes.
Do you have any coffee?
I asked.
Is this your first time into a 7-Eleven?
Still kept his eyes closed.
Kind of.
I replied in a drunken voice. He opened his drowsy eyes, looked at me with great disappointment, and pointed to the left-end corner.
Welcome to 7-Eleven. The coffee machine is there.
I felt a little embarrassed because, honestly, it was indeed my first time in a 7-Eleven. Why? Because I never got the chance to visit one until that night. I walked up to the coffee machine and on my way grabbed a few munchies to go with. The coffee machine was pouring very slowly, or maybe it felt like that because I was drunk. While I waited for the process to be over, I heard the store door open and close. I looked at the counter and saw a woman in her late 50s wearing a pink dress with huge sunflowers printed on it. She stopped at the counter and asked the cashier something. The cashier was already sailing in his dreamland, so he didn't open his eyes this time. The woman turned around when our eyes met. She let out a freaky smile. I know I was intoxicated, but believe me when I say this, the woman had a huge set of teeth. Her teeth were so sharp and pointy that it felt like she filed them artificially. The color of her teeth was a sick yellow, which made me nauseous. I turned my face away from her and concentrated on my coffee. I must have taken one sip of my cup when I heard her footsteps coming towards me. I kept a straight face, trying my best not to get agitated by her. She came close to me and said in a squeaky voice,
I don't mean to disturb you, but can you tell me where I can find the dental floss? The cashier seems to be too busy for the customers.
At any other time, I would have ignored her, but I needed to finish the coffee before going back to the car. And I wanted her off my back, so I pointed to the shelf ahead where I could see some toothbrushes hanging.
I think you might find it there.
You are drunk.
I got embarrassed when she said it, but I smiled awkwardly.
My husband used to get drunk like you.
She thought for a few seconds, like she was trying hard to remember when the last time her husband got drunk, and then said,
Until he died.
What?
I exclaimed in shock. She smiled again, flashing her disgusting teeth, and went back to get dental floss. Honestly, she did need some dental care, along with a mental checkup. I watched her. She stopped at the shelf, picked up a dental floss, and to my surprise, started flossing right there. Yeah, like literally pulled the thread out and started flossing her teeth. Her eyes were set on me, and mine on her. We were caught in each other's stare. After a point, I did look away. I finished my coffee and was all set to leave when I heard a small tingling sound. The sound of a bead dropping on the floor. What happened next will forever be imprinted in my memory. I looked down to see what she dropped and saw a big, sharp yellow tooth with blood stains on its ends lying on the floor. The woman wasn't just flossing her teeth, she was flossing them violently enough for them to fall out one by one. She was chopping her tooth one by one from her gums. Her face looked horrifying. There were no signs of pain, even though her gums bled. She was staring at me without blinking and continuing to floss like a barbarian. I don't know why she was doing this, but fear choked my throat and I forgot to scream. My legs were frozen, palms were sweating. I wanted to scream and run away, but couldn't. I don't know how long I stood like that and watched the woman getting rid of her teeth. Once she was done, she wiped her bleeding mouth with a handkerchief and then smiled at me one last time. But this time, her smile was even freakier. A set of swollen, empty gums forming the most petrifying smile in the world. She calmly walked back to the counter, kept $1 in front of the sleepy cashier, and left the store. The pile of bloody teeth was still scattered on the floor, and I could feel my stomach churn. I ran outside and vomited my butt off. I somehow drove back home and got very bad dreams throughout the night. But the story doesn't end there. A month later, I was sitting in my living room, sipping morning coffee, when I turned to the news. I saw her again, but this time with more context. The caption read, "Cannibal wife ate husband and then pulled out her teeth." Yes, that psycho woman was a murderer turned cannibal who killed her husband and then feasted on her husband's flesh. The news reporter also said that when the cops asked her why she pulled out her teeth, she laughed, saying,
I punished myself for being a bad wife, but I swear, he tasted so mouthwatering.
As I offloaded the last of our belongings from the moving truck, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. It had been a long few weeks packing up our old house and getting everything ready for the move. Now, standing in front of our new home, I couldn't have been happier. It was perfect. Exactly what we'd been looking for. My little boy and girl were running around in the yard, playing with each other and laughing. After my wife had died, it was moments like these that I cherished the most. As I watched them, my daughter suddenly stopped and looked toward the house next door.
Daddy, who's that?
She asked, pointing at the house. I followed her gaze and saw a young girl standing in the window, staring back at us. She looked sickly and her skin was a yellow hue with yellow eyes. I smiled and waved, but she didn't respond. Instead, she stared at me happily with a strange smile on her face, for a reason I couldn't quite figure out. I wasn't really sure why she seemed to be so eager, but she stared at me with a grin smiling on her face. Maybe she was just excited to play with the new kids on the block, I told myself.
That's the neighbor's daughter. Maybe you can go over and introduce yourself later.
My daughter nodded and went back to playing with her brother. I didn't think much of it then, but I should have in retrospect. Especially because the neighbor's house was vacant, as I would realize when I saw the for sale sign in the yard a while later. A few days later, as I was unpacking boxes in the living room, I heard my son running down the stairs. He eagerly asked me if he could go play outside. As soon as I had told him yes, he darted out the door and was away before I could ask him my next question. Where was my daughter? The two children usually hung out closely and were inseparable, so I wondered where she was. Sighing, I got up and walked up the stairs to go find my daughter and see what she had gotten up to. I looked in her bedroom, but she wasn't there. Then I checked the bathroom, but she wasn't there either. Where could she be? I was starting to feel a little worried, so I went to check my son's room to see if she was in there. Nope, she wasn't in there either. I was starting to panic and had already reached the stairs before I heard a noise. I heard her voice. Running from room to room, I followed the sound of her talking before I realized where it was coming from. The open attic door. I slowly walked up to the door and peeked inside. My daughter was sitting in the middle of the room, talking to someone in the dark, but I didn't see anyone.
Who are you talking to, sweetie?
Daddy, come here. Say hello to my new friends.
She pointed in the direction of the dark attic. As I stared into the darkness, I dismissed her words as the product of an overactive imagination. But then I saw it, and I felt my heart leap into my throat. 3 pairs of eyes stared at me from the darkness of the attic. 3 human pairs of eyes.
Anna, listen to me. I need to talk to your friends. Go downstairs right away.
Okay, Daddy.
I tried to keep my voice from being panicked, but I was terrified. What were 3 people doing in our attic, and how long had they been there? I waited until I heard Anna running down the stairs before I began to slowly back up. I would call the police as soon as I gotten out of the house. But as I retreated toward the attic doorway, I saw the 3 pairs of eyes grow nearer to me. They were following me. I was about a yard or 2 from the door when I turned and began to run. I heard their feet pounding the floor behind me as they chased me. I was about to reach the door when I felt something grab my ankle, tripping me. I fell hard and hit my head on the floor. As I drifted into unconsciousness, I heard the footsteps getting closer to me. I woke up and jumped back involuntarily. I was bound to a chair, and just a few inches from my face was one of the most disturbing faces I had ever seen. A thin, hollow face with sunken, sickly yellow eyes and yellow teeth bared at me in a grin.
What the heck do you want?
Food.
It was just one word, but it was enough to send a chill down my spine. The man in front of me, his hair long and tangled yet sickly thin, pointed toward me with a bony finger.
Food.
He repeated the word, but suddenly I understood. He wasn't just saying the word, he meant me. The hunger in his eyes was too much to bear, and I couldn't help but cry out in terror.
Please, no. Please, don't eat me.
But it was too late. The man lunged forward, his teeth sinking into my flesh. I screamed and writhed in pain as he tore a chunk off my arm, wildly grinning as he held the flesh in his hands. He gestured toward me.
Food!
And the 2 other pairs of eyes emerged from the darkness, their sickly skin similar to that of the man who was devouring my arm. They began to advance on me as I screamed and begged for mercy. Suddenly, however, I heard sirens from outside. The police had arrived. The 3 figures in the attic froze and then scattered like rats, running in different directions. I was found bleeding and barely conscious, but I survived. The police never did catch the 3 people who attacked me, but they did have previous information about them. Apparently these people had lived in the walls in the attic of the house I had bought, and had since been connected to a string of disappearances in the area. Apparently, they moved from house to house, living in the walls, the attics, or even abandoned houses in the area. They would live in houses that were for sale and wait for newcomers to fall into their trap. I was lucky to be alive, but I will never forget the hunger in their eyes. I owe my life to my daughter. She was smart enough to run and call the police, but I will never forget the terror I felt when I realized that these people were after me. It's just something to think about, isn't it? Sometimes I wake up in a cold sweat, convinced I saw their eyes in my dream. The worst part about it is that sometimes, on very rare occasions, I think I can see their sickly yellow eyes even when I'm not dreaming. The police never did find them after all, and from the look on that crazed face, I think that he really enjoyed the taste of my flesh. Maybe he wants more. I don't think I'm ever going to feel comfortable staying at home alone ever again. My name is Susan, and I had a horrifying experience several years back that has led me to fear a few things. Romance, for one, and being alone at night, for another. It all started on a Tuesday night. My husband had texted me earlier that day saying he was stuck in a terrible traffic jam and wouldn't be able to make it home in time. He said he was booking a motel just outside the town and would be back the next day.
I'm super sorry, sweetie. I'm so tired, and this traffic is insane. I won't be able to make it in time,
he said on the phone.
I'll call you when I get there.
Okay, darling. Be safe.
I will. You know, I'm always safe when I'm thinking of you,
he said before hanging up. I sighed and went back to my book. I wasn't scared of being alone at night. I was used to it. But as the hours dragged on, I began to feel more bored and restless. I had done all the chores and errands that needed to be done, so I was left with nothing to do but sit in my room and wait for my husband to call. Knowing I'd have the whole house to myself, I decided to take a long hot bath and relax for the night. It had been a stressful few weeks, and I was looking forward to some peace and quiet. I stretched and yawned before heading to the bathroom. I grabbed the bath salt and poured it into the tub. I lit some candles and incense, and soon the bathroom was steaming with a warm, calming scent. As I stepped into the bubble-filled bathtub and began to relax, I heard a knock downstairs. A sort of thud, as if someone was trying to get in or something had fallen. Walking downstairs, I felt slightly uncomfortable, but I continued. Something had probably just fallen over, and I was sure that it was nothing to be afraid of. I slowly opened the door to the living room, where I saw nothing. Everything was as it should have been, and I was relieved. I turned around to go back upstairs, but as I did, I felt this chill on my back that made me freeze, as if a cold wind caressed my skin. The window was open, and I stared at it as the curtains gently swayed in the wind. The night was cold, and I could feel it coming in through the window. I hurried to close it, but before I could do so, a dark figure appeared outside. My heart stopped when I saw the face of the man outside. He was wearing a cheap Halloween mask and a black hoodie. He stood at the window, staring at me as I clutched the open window.
Come outside, Susan,
he said, his voice garbled and menacing as if he was chewing on something to disguise his voice. Slamming the window frame shut, I screamed and ran for my life. I felt his eyes following me from the window as I ran away from the window and heard a crash moments later as the glass shattered. The man, with his knife glowing in the moonlight, stepped through the window with his mask on and his hood up. I had desperately shut and latched the living room door and ran up the stairs to the second floor, clutching my towel around my body. I felt, at least right then, that I had the home field advantage at least. I knew the layout of the house. The intruder did not. I ran through each room, trying to make it impossible for him to get me. With a cold chill running down my spine, I found a place to hide and settled in. Our house had a pretty unique layout, but there was one thing I was sure the intruder wouldn't find. In one of the rooms, we had a wall where my husband and I cut out an entryway to the attic, and I was sure it wouldn't be visible to an outsider. Flattening myself against the wall, I heard the intruder's steps come closer and closer. Creaking, the door to the room I was in opened, and I heard his heavy breathing. I held my breath, fear coursing through my veins. A voice spoke directly outside the door to the attic where I was hidden.
Oh, Susan, I know you're here.
The voice sounded eerily familiar. I heard the creaking of his footsteps coming closer and closer before the masked man finally stepped inside the room. In a split second, he was standing right in front of me, and I screamed, turning to run. As I did, however, I tripped and fell, my towel falling off my body as I hit the ground. The intruder laughed, and as I stumbled to my feet, I glanced towards his face. Perhaps it was the excitement of the moment, but the mask had partially slipped from his face, and what I saw made the recognition even more terrifying. My husband stood before me, his knife raised as he laughed.
What are you doing? Jeff, what is wrong with you?
I managed to ask, though my voice was shaking. He simply laughed even harder and stepped forward, pushing me back against the wall. His eyes were like I had never seen them before. Eyes of a pure maniac, and it was then I knew that Jeff had lost his grip on reality and sanity.
Don't worry, Susan. I'm doing this for us.
He said as he pulled out a syringe from his pocket with one hand, still holding the knife in the other. Screaming in terror, I kicked his shins, making him trip as I dragged myself away. I could hear him cursing behind me as I ran to the door to the attic, shoving myself through and running down the stairs of my house as I heard him scream in anger. As I ran down the stairs, though, I heard his footsteps following me rapidly as he ran, the knife poised above his head. I screamed in fear. Suddenly, though, I heard a loud bang and turned around to see him tripping, falling down the stairs as he wildly tossed the knife towards me in a desperate bid to make me stop. Thud. He fell at the bottom of the stairs, motionless. I didn't stop running, though, until I got to the neighbor's house and dialed 911. My husband, Jeff, was eventually arrested and sentenced to a psychiatric hospital. The doctors said that he had been suffering from severe paranoia and delusions, which caused him to become violent and irrational. Since then, I have had an almost constant fear of being alone at night. It's a fear that has grown so large that I now suffer from agoraphobia and panic attacks when I have to stay home alone. You're probably wondering why, or maybe you think it's just because of that situation that I can barely sleep, and because of that one night that I keep a loaded gun under my pillow. No, it's not just because of that one night. It's because a while back, I got a phone call from the hospital where Jeff is staying. They said he'd escaped and gone missing, and that the only information they had was that he had written over and over on the walls of his cell,
I'll help her.
"Call me crazy, but sometimes I think I hear things in my house moving around, and I feel as if several times my bed has been moved while I was sleeping in it. It might just be my overactive imagination, but it's enough to make me feel uneasy and more than a little afraid of being alone in my house at night. I don't know where he is. All I know is that he's coming back." It was a mundane Tuesday afternoon. I was yawning, standing in the vast IKEA store, when a teenaged boy walked in. He wore a purple hoodie with a pair of black joggers. His hair was parted in the middle, which kind of gave his sharp face a creepy look. He probably had too much gel on his hair, which is why his head shined like fine silk. I have been working in IKEA for the past 3 months, and this was the first time I saw this boy. He stopped right in the middle of the store and looked around like he was searching for something. I wanted to ask him if he was looking for something, but our manager had this strict policy of not bothering a customer until they ask for help themselves. So I patiently waited for him to come up to me. He stood like that for a few minutes, then looked at me. As our eyes met, he kept staring at me. I called out to him without leaving the counter.
Can I help you?
He pointed to a corner and said,
There was a red high-back chair here last night. Where is it?
So, he did come here before. I generally worked the day shift, so it wasn't a shock that I didn't recognize him. I politely replied,
The armchairs and Chase Lounges collection has been shifted to the business place sections. So you go straight, take a left, and you'll find it there.
I expected him to go look for it, but instead, he got really angry and asked me a pretty weird question.
But why did you move him?
Him? I was now even more shocked to hear him personify a lounge chair.
Sorry, but we're remodeling this place, hence the store manager decided to arrange it per his convenience.
He doesn't like that, stupid people!
He didn't wait for my answer and went to the business section looking for his high-back chair. I was blown away by his strange behavior. What the hell is wrong with this kid? I waited at the counter, thinking he would come back and ask me to do the billing for his favorite chair, but after half an hour, I saw him leaving the store without saying anything. I was handling another customer, so I couldn't ask him what exactly was his purpose to come here. I felt curious. What is so special about that common high-back chair? During my break, I went back to take a look. The chair was standing in the corner, just like every other piece of furniture in the store. There was nothing around it or on it that could tell me what the boy did when he came this afternoon looking for it. The store has a security camera, so I decided to check the footage. Carl, our store security, was watching funny videos in the CCTV room when I entered and asked him to show me the footage of this afternoon. He played the particular segment where the boy is seen walking to the business place. He came near the high-back chair and hugged it. Yes, I'm not lying. The grown-up teenage boy hugged a chair like it was some human being. For the rest of his stay, he talked to that chair. It was so creepy to watch. He was laughing and making a funny face at the chair like it was a human being. There's this one time, he even looked at the camera with the same angry face. His expression showed that the fact he was being recorded while talking to a chair pissed him off.
What the hell's wrong with him? I have no idea.
That night, I could barely sleep. The boy was so mysterious. His actions made no sense. I was definite that the next time he comes in, I will follow him secretly. The next day, I went for my lunch break. When I came back, Carl rushed to me and said,
The boy's back.
Without wasting a single second, I went to the business place right where the high-back chair was kept. I pretended to clean a nearby corner so I could overhear him. Surprisingly, he was so into the one-sided conversation that he barely noticed me. He was sitting on the floor.
But Dad, Mom won't believe me. I know she loves me, but why did she keep saying you're gone? Why can't they see you as I do? I miss you. I'm saving up so I can take you home. I won't let you stay here longer. Yeah, it was fun to hit him with that rock. But he said you died. You're not dead. You can't die. I won't let you. I will fight everyone who will say things like that about you.
Suddenly, I knocked the mop on the wooden table, and the boy turned around. His eyes were bloodshot. It felt like he was going to lunge at me and stab me to death for eavesdropping. I got so awkward that I quickly walked away. I couldn't hear the rest of his talk, but when the boy left the store, he gave me a death stare. What the hell was he talking about? Does he think the chair is his dad? But why? I could tell that his dad passed away, but that was an unusual way of dealing with grief. I secretly followed him. He walked to the next block and then took a right. I did the same. He stopped in front of a small 2-story house and then got inside. So, this is where he lives. I knew it was none of my business, but I was concerned about this young fellow. Gathering all my courage, I rang the doorbell. I was expecting him to open the door, but instead, a woman in her late 40s came out. Her eyes looked puffed from a lot of crying.
Yes.
You don't know me, ma'am, but there's something I need to tell you. The boy who lives here, is he your son?
Yes, but why? Did he do something?
I told her everything. As soon as she got to know about it, she broke down in tears. And finally, I got to know the other side of the story. The boy's name is Jason, and 5 days back he lost his father to a heart attack. They were all watching TV after dinner, and his father was smoking, sitting near the fireplace on his favorite high-back red chair. His father passed away on that chair, and since then, he developed this freaky habit of talking to their chair like his dad still sits on it. He was sent to a psychiatrist who advised the family to get rid of that chair, but once they did, the matter turned to worse. Jason now keeps searching for the same kind of high-back chair and talks to it like it's his father. Now I understood why he hugged that chair and came every day to the IKEA store to spend time with it. There was nothing I could do to help that poor boy, but after that day, he came to the store twice. I didn't disturb him and let him have his space, but the story doesn't end in a good way. I was on sick leave for a week when Jason came to the store with a gun, sat on the chair, and shot himself. He couldn't handle the grief of losing his father unexpectedly. I'm still working in that store, and the manager burnt the chair after this incident. Whenever I get time, I visit Jason's mom because she is now all alone in this world. I hope wherever Jason is now, he has finally reunited with his dad. May God rest their soul in peace. My name is Emily. I'm 26 years old, and I hate Valentine's Day. I know. What's not to love about a day dedicated to love and romance? But for me, it's sort of a reminder that I'm alone, and I'm genuinely too scared to ever be with anyone again. I've been single for years now, ever since my Valentine's Day ended in what can only be described as an experience that will make your skin crawl. It was my second year of college. I was young and naive, and honestly, I just wanted somebody to spend the day with. I had just broken up with my boyfriend of several months, and I was really feeling down about it. As I walked to class, one of my friends came up to me and handed me her phone. She had something to show me.
What's this?
It's a new dating app. I just signed up for it, and I've already got a date for Valentine's Day.
Girl, you better as well.
I took the phone and looked at it. I don't remember for sure what the app was called, but I know it wasn't one of the mainstream ones. I think it was some off-brand dating app. Well, I thought about it for a few minutes and then decided to download it. I figured, what could it hurt? Sitting in classes all day, I began to get rather excited about the prospect of going on a date with someone new. As Valentine's Day neared, I matched with a guy who seemed really nice. We talked for a few days, and then we decided to meet up. He told me he would pick me up from my dorm at 7 p.m. Let me stress, this guy had no red flags. I had no reason to believe that he wasn't perfect. Okay, so his pictures were a bit hot, but I figured he was just trying to show off his best side, you know? Still, our chats had barely a dull moment, and as we continued to talk, I couldn't help but think that I had finally found someone who I could connect with. I liked funny cat videos, and he had an adorable one of his own. He liked hiking, and I love nature. It seemed like we were a match made in heaven. So, when he came to pick me up on Valentine's Day, I was beyond excited. I remember waiting in my room, staring at the clock as it ticked closer and closer to 7 p.m. I was so nervous, I could barely sit still. Finally, there was a knock at my door. I leaped up to answer it, and there he was. He was even more handsome in person. He had dark hair and piercing gray eyes. He was wearing a black leather jacket and jeans. He looked like he belonged in a motorcycle gang, but I didn't care. I still like bad boys.
Emily?
Yes, it's so nice to finally meet you, Nicholas. Come in, please.
I stepped aside to let him in, my heart racing the entire time. I closed the door behind him, and then we just kind of stood there, staring at each other for a few awkward moments. As we stood there, I couldn't help but notice a strange tattoo on his neck. It looked like a prison number.
Whoa, that's a cool tattoo. What does it mean?
Although I was too absorbed at the moment to notice his discomfort, I did hear the shift in his voice as he answered.
Nothing. Just thought it was cool back in the day. Let's get out of here.
As we walked out of my dorm, he put his arm around me and I leaned into him. I felt so safe and comfortable with him. We walked to his car, a black SUV, and got in.
So, where are we going?
I thought we could go for a walk in the park. It's such a beautiful night outside.
I agreed, and we headed to the park. We walked and talked, and I told him all about myself. I told him about my family, my friends, and my hobbies. He listened intently, and I felt like he really cared about what I had to say. That's when I began to notice that the park was eerily empty. There wasn't a soul in sight.
Where is everyone? It's so quiet and empty.
He looked at me with a strange expression on his face, but he didn't answer. He just kept walking, his arm around my waist. We came to a stop in front of a large tree. This was when I began to feel really uneasy. I tried to take a step back, but he held me close. I looked up at him, and he was staring at me with an intensity that I can only describe as hunger. His piercing gray eyes had taken on an almost insane quality as he stared at me with them widened, and the red veins at the very edges of his eyes became more pronounced.
What's wrong?
I tried to pull away, wanting to get out of there as quickly as possible. He didn't answer me, but his grip tightened. He just stared at me, his eyes drilling into mine. And then, without warning, he attacked me. Grabbing my throat, he began to choke me. I struggled against him, but I couldn't break free. I could feel my vision start to fade as I gasped for air. Just when I thought I was going to pass out, he released me. I fell to the ground, coughing and gasping for air. He loomed over me, a sickening grin on his face, and that's when I saw it again. He grabbed his jacket and tossed it to the side. His prison number flashed in my mind as I saw what he had been wearing under his jacket, an orange jumpsuit.
You're an inmate!
He just laughed, a cold, maniac laugh that sent chills down my spine. Grabbing his face with his nails, he dug them into his skin and began to slowly scratch his face, starting from directly below his eyes till he reached his lips. As blood began to run down his face, he just kept laughing. I was in pure terror at this point, and I scrambled to my feet and started to run, but he was too fast. He caught up to me and tackled me to the ground. I screamed as he began to choke me again. I thought for sure that this was it, that I was going to die. But then, just as suddenly as he had attacked me, he stopped. He got up and dusted himself off and looked down at me again. Finally, he spoke, and with each word, the blood from his face splattered down into my face.
Let's play a game, Emily. I escaped just so I could have some fun on Valentine's Day. Now, I'll give you 3 minutes. Try to make it out of the park before I catch you. But if I do catch you, you'll never be alone on Valentine's Day again.
Staring at me, he began to count down from 3. I struggled to my feet and began to run. I could hear him counting behind me as he stood there in the park with blood streaming from his face. As I glanced back, I saw what looked like a trail of blood following him as he slowly began to walk after me. I ran as fast as I could, but I knew he was going to catch me. There was no way I could outrun him.
3, 2, 1.
His voice stopped, and suddenly, I heard crazed footsteps pounding behind me as he began to run. I was about to give up, As I ran, my legs were seared with the cold pain of exercise such as this. Just as he was about to catch up to me though, I saw a ranger's car drive into the park. I think they were there to close up for the night, but to this day, I still don't care.
Help me!
I ran toward them shouting as the man who had been chasing me darted into the bushes. I heard a scream of anger from his direction as he realized that he had lost me. The ranger got out of his car and ran toward me as I collapsed into his arms, sobbing and shaking uncontrollably.
What happened, miss? You're safe now.
Maybe I am, but they never found him. They never caught the man who had tried to kill me. And ever since that day, I've been terrified of being alone on Valentine's Day, and just as equally terrified of trying to find a date for fear that he or someone like him shows up again.
I work as a gas station employee in the state of Maine. It's a pretty quiet job, but I don't mind it. It's just another day when a man in a thick coat and a hat comes into the store and asks for a pack of bubble gum. Anything else I can get for you? That'll be all. All right, sir. Your total is $3.92. Have a great day. I ring him up and he pays cash and leaves. That happens every day. You feel me? Well, it happened differently today. Maine is a state that you can't ever really describe unless you've been there. The cold, desolate gray fog rolled in from the Atlantic, a blizzard setting in just as I was about to close up shop. It's nights like these that make me wonder if I'm really cut out for this job. Anyway, I digress. Let me explain to you what happened to me today and why I'm never going back to that 7-Eleven again. I waved goodbye to the customer as he went out into the cold night, and I followed him out the door. The clock was a few minutes before the time I had to close anyway, so I'd figured I'd close early and bid farewell to that 7-Eleven. After all, nobody would be out in a blizzard like this, and I wouldn't be too long. It was then that I noticed the man had stopped at the corner of the lot, just staring at me. Nodding to him, I made my way back toward my car, but the man started loitering towards me. "Hey boy," he said, "you finished up at that 7-Eleven? Mind giving me a ride home?" "Isn't that your truck over there?" I asked, pointing to the black pickup parked a few feet away. I could feel the hairs standing on the back of my neck, but I tried to stay calm. He smiled and shook his head, mumbling something about the cold being too much. I sighed and started to unlock my car door, but something made me look back. The man was still standing there, his eyes boring into me with an expression I can only describe as hungry. I rushed to the car and locked the doors, my heart pounding in my chest. I thought I heard him say something, but I was too scared to stay around and find out. Starting my car, I swiveled my head to make sure he wasn't following me. To my relief, I heard the engine of a truck rev as he pulled out of the parking lot, the smoke from his exhaust clouding the night sky. I drove home faster than I ever had before, watching the shadows of the trees as they danced in my rearview mirror. The skies quickly darkened as I settled in for my near-hour drive into the Maine wilderness to the next town over, where I lived. For those who don't live in Maine, I want you to imagine it. The cold, the darkness, and the silence. I never felt so alone in my life. As I got closer to home, a voice in my head told me to look into my rearview mirror one last time before turning down my lane. A chill ran up my spine, and I froze. The man in the hat was following me. His truck was barely visible in the darkness, but I recognized it easily. It was a dirty white, with dents and scratches all over the hood. I felt chilled, and although I figured it was a coincidence, something inside me told me that it definitely wasn't. There's no chance he lives in the same direction as I do, right? I whispered to myself, my stomach tied in knots. He had to. As I drove, though, I didn't turn into my driveway like I wanted to, and I instead turned down a street on the opposite side of the road. I looked into my rearview mirror, and to my relief, he had vanished. My relief was short-lived, though, as around the corner I saw headlights and the faint silhouette of the truck in my rearview mirror. He had followed my turn, and I felt fear grip my heart. I drove faster, my hands shaking on the wheel as I took another turn, making sure this time that it was down an alley that was known to not have streetlights. Parking quickly and turning off my engine, I sat there staring behind me. In a few seconds, I heard his truck idling now as he slowly drove past the alleyway. With my heart in my chest, I waited another few seconds before I dared start my car and drive home. As I cautiously backed my car out of the alleyway, I felt chills on my spine, as if someone was watching me, and I quickly drove back as fast as I could. Suddenly, however, as I turned my head away from the back of my car and faced the front windshield, my heart stopped and my blood ran cold. The same man in the hat and coat was standing there, with a look in his eyes that I can only describe as pure evil. He stared at me as I sped away, and I have to say that I'm still shivering thinking about his eyes. They were black and brown with red bloodshot lines running across them, a look of pure horror and malice that will haunt me for the rest of my life. I had enough, and perhaps the cold air drove me a bit crazy. Rolling down my window, I screamed over to him. "What the heck do you want from me?" "Nothing," he replied. Nothing came from his red and brutalized lips as they cracked into a smile. It was a simple response, but you never expect it. Think about it. Whenever somebody asks the question in the movies, they expect some sort of answer, but this man simply said nothing and continued to stare at me with those eyes of pure evil. He did respond in another way, though. He began to walk towards me, his strides slowing as he got closer. I hit the gas and sped away, not looking back until I was halfway home. Pulling up at my house, I hurriedly got out of the car and quickly locked all the windows and doors. I was terrified, with images of that man filling my head as I stared through the window looking for any sign of him. As I write this, I'm keeping the lights on in the house, and I'm not venturing out for anything. I'm not sure what he wanted, but it was enough to make me never want to go back to that 7-Eleven again. And the worst part about all this is that he might still be out there, lurking in the night somewhere, waiting for his next victim. Or even worse, he could be right outside of my house as I'm writing this. It might just be my imagination, but I swear I heard the soft idling of a truck just beyond the streetlight that I pass by every night. If he somehow found my driveway, he's not getting in, and I'm not leaving my house. Not until the sun rises, at least.
I like social media, although at first I used a pseudonym for all of my social media platforms. I ended up switching to my name, Adrian, a few years down the road. It just felt more natural after I had built up a following. Recently, a trend had gained attraction on the internet. People were staying overnight in stores, filming their experience and uploading it to YouTube, so I decided to try it out. Big mistake, guys. Don't try this. I decided to pick IKEA for my overnight challenge because of its sheer size and the fact that there were no surveillance cameras. I thought that since I was doing the challenge by myself, it would be safer. Little did I know that I was wrong. For this reason, I began carefully building my plan as to how I was going to stay the night in such a large store. I decided to hide in one of the wardrobes until closing time. My trusty cameraman, Jason, volunteered to tag along with me to the store.
Adrian, this vid is going to be so sick, man. I really think we'll hit it big time, viral with this one. I agree, dude. People eat this type of content up, and I want to be the one who brings them something they're never going to forget. Now, let's get the show on the road.
We chatted as we were packing the car, taking cameras and a few other items with us, like snacks and a few blankets. When we arrived at IKEA, it was already dark. We both felt an uneasy feeling in the air as soon as we stepped foot inside the store. I made sure to keep Jason busy for the better part of an hour as I went around and surveyed the place before finally settling in on our hiding spot, the wardrobe section. I made sure to be extra careful as I slipped into one of the wardrobes, making sure that Jason had locked it behind him as we climbed in. We waited for an hour, both giggling and pulling some bits for the camera every once in a while, pretending we almost got caught. In reality, just playing a recording from some other video to make it seem like an employee almost opened the door. The time passed quickly, especially since we had plenty of setup things to do and cameras to position in the wardrobe for when we would come out. As we finished setting up, the lights finally dimmed and the store closed. Jason and I exchanged looks of excitement and almost simultaneously hopped out of the wardrobe.
Whoa, guys, take a look at this. We're all alone in IKEA at night, and it's creepy as hell.
We began to explore the store, taking in all the empty aisles and the eerie silence that followed us. Still, both Jason and I chatted up a storm, so it didn't seem all that bad. As we walked, however, an eerie feeling began to settle in as we noticed subtle movements in the corner of our eyes.
What the hell? What is it, Jason?
I heard Jason yell and turn around to see him pointing toward one of the aisles of IKEA, an empty and black abyss that looked no different than the rest of the store. Jason, however, looked stricken with terror.
What is it, man?
Dude, there was a dude there. I saw a pair of eyes. They were glowing in the dark. I swear to God, Adrian, there's someone here.
My heart instantly began to rush with excitement. Jason was playing this up so well. He hadn't told me about this bit, but I was certainly going to enjoy it. I was absolutely going to play along with this and let it carry this video to the top. As I walked toward the dark aisle, though, I glanced back at Jason. His face was white, and he was looking at me like I was crazy.
No, seriously, man, there's someone here.
I laughed, still not taking him seriously, and turned back toward the aisle. There, staring back at me, were a pair of eyes floating in the darkness.
What the?
I asked, my voice echoing through the empty store. Before I knew it, a figure emerged from the darkness and ran past me. I could tell it was a man, but I couldn't make out his face. He was wearing raggedy clothes and had long hair that was matted to his head. Screaming what seemed like jumbled nonsense, he launched himself at Jason, tackling him to the ground. Screaming, I ran toward them and tried to help Jason up as the man ran away into the darkness.
Dude, are you okay?
Let's get out of here, man.
We both turned and began to run toward the exit. Our only thought was to get away from the store as quickly as possible. As we ran, though, I quickly began to outpace Jason. He was panting and struggling to keep up with me, clearly shaken by the experience. The door was right in front of me. I began to feel a sense of relief. We'd made it, and the content was going to be incredible. Suddenly, though, I heard a soft thud and a grunt from Jason. I turned around and saw the eyes of the old man, his raggedy clothes, as he grabbed Jason by the neck with long and gray fingers, pushing what seemed like a chef's knife directly through Jason's chest. Jason gurgled, his eyes widening in the shock as he slowly collapsed. The breath left his body without him ever being capable of saying another word. His eyes slowly becoming lifeless as I watched helplessly. I was frozen, unable to do anything but watch as the old man bent down and began to lap in the blood spilling out of Jason's body. The old, frazzled man squatted there with his hands holding the body of my friend, his eyes filled with the sort of hunger that only a starving man would have. Pulling the knife from the body of my friend, he began to lick his tongue down the blade as he let the sharp edge run into the surface of his tongue, cutting him as more blood began to drip onto the ground and paint the floor red. I snapped back to reality and began to run as fast as I could away from the store, screaming for help. I'm never going to forget the image of Jason lying there, lifeless, with the old man gulping his blood down his throat. And it's a lesson to all of us. Never underestimate the risks associated with these so-called overnight challenges. Be safe out there. As soon as I left the building, I contacted the police, who quickly responded and arrested the old man. It turns out that he was a homeless man who had been living in the store, using it as shelter. It was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life, and I'm still haunted by the image of Jason lying there in the aisle, lifeless. Still, I can't help but think about it in a pretty positive light. I mean, the video got like 1 million views and it even made the news. I guess like all bad things, there are some advantages to them. I desperately want to move out of here. I know what happened was an unfortunate coincidence, but I can't stand it. What if it happens again? I feel in danger all the time in the place where I should be safe. The night everything happened, I was alone at home, doing a school assignment on my computer in the bedroom. I was really focused.
What the heck?
I got up, left my bedroom, and went down half the stairs, since from there I could see the entrance and the living room from my home. A few seconds later, it happened again. I stood still, analyzing what was happening. My heart started to beat fast. I imagined the danger I was in, but I couldn't believe it. Is this really happening? I thought. No, it's over. That was what I wanted to think, since the seconds had passed and everything had gone back to completely silent. But soon, with the little lighting that there was, I managed to see a silhouette in front of the window of the living room. The person raised their hand, with which they held an object. It was at that moment I reacted and ran up the stairs without giving it much thought. Seconds later, I heard it. Quickly, before the person could notice, I turned off the light in my room and grabbed my cell phone, but I didn't stay there. Since my bedroom was located next to the stairs, I ran as quietly as possible to my parents' room, which was down the hall on the second floor. I soon went in as it was open. It was all so quiet that it seemed like no one else was there, which was really a disadvantage for me. I needed to close the door, but what if the invader heard me? What would they do to me? What did they want? My hand was shaking just above the door handle, but I finally managed to get a firm grip on it and turned it. Feeling how a great bead of sweat was running down my face, I pulled the door closer and released the handle. It had sounded much louder than I would have liked, so I just hoped the invader was far enough away. On weak legs, I walked away and hid behind my parents' bed. My hands were so covered in sweat that when I turned my phone on, they were fogging up the screen. Without waiting any longer, I dialed 911. Soon, a voice was heard.
911, what's your emergency?
I immediately turned the sound down a lot more, but my hands were shaking so much that it took me longer than it should have.
911, what's your emergency?
The moment I put the phone close to my ear and heard her again, I remained silent.
You can't speak?
I don't know where they are.
Who?
I waited a few seconds before answering.
A person is in my house.
Do you know who that person is?
I could barely focus on her questions as the amount of thoughts going through my head was abysmal.
I don't know. I don't think so. I could barely see them.
Where are you?
In my parents' room. I locked the door.
Is anyone else with you?
No. I think the person is in my bedroom.
Are you okay? Where are you?
I froze like a statue when I heard him. His voice was filled with fury. I was so nervous I couldn't take it anymore.
I don't know what he wants. Do something.
I need to know where you are.
I quickly told her my home's address.
The police are on the way.
Will they take long?
There are many officers taking care of another matter, but soon a patrol will go to your house.
Where the fuck are you?
Stay with me and keep calm.
I moved the phone away from my ear so I could hear the invader better. After all, she wasn't really helping.
Do you think I'm stupid? I saw the lamp on from outside, mother...
Immediately after hearing him, I covered my mouth.
I need something, and you're going to give it to me. You can't hide in your pathetic house.
I brought the cell phone up to my ear again.
Are you there?
He's gonna find me. He's gonna kill me.
Please?
I hung up the call, put the phone on the floor, and hugged my own legs, just almost like in the fetal position. My body didn't stop trembling due to uncertainty, since everything was completely silent again. Now there was only one room left. I heard the man's footsteps getting closer and closer until they reached their destination, the door of my parents' room.
Are you done playing hide and seek yet?
The entire room fell silent after his question.
Open the door! Did you hear me? Open the door or I'll shoot!
I started to cry silently, but I didn't answer him.
You're only making everything more difficult!
Suddenly, just as he had done with the front door, he started kicking the one to my parents' room. I put both hands over my mouth to keep from making noise. It was almost as if screaming was inevitable. My hands fell to the sides of my body involuntarily, and I let out all the air I had in my lungs as soon as I realized what had happened.
Look who's there!
I was so shocked that I hadn't noticed he was already in the room until we were face to face.
Give me all your money!
He was pointing a gun at me.
We don't have much here. I'm only gonna ask one more time. Give me all the cash you have. Your cell phone too. I know you have it in there.
As requested, I gave him my cell phone and then led him to my bedroom to find my wallet and give him the money.
Good boy. Now you're gonna let me go without saying anything. Understand? I will. I'm sure you will. Turn around.
I did as he asked, hoping that soon the nightmare would end. That's when I heard it. Click, click, click.
Shit!
Then the man ran away and left the house. Once the police arrived, I knew what was happening. A criminal had escaped from jail, and it turns out that he was the one who invaded my house. But that's not what terrifies me the most. What keeps me up at night is knowing that I could have died that day since he tried to shoot me 3 times. There was nothing special about that night except for the fact that it was Valentine's Day, and I wanted to take Julia out for dinner. It's been weeks since we have spoken to each other properly. She has changed since our daughter Dorothy died in an accident. You see, the loss has affected her differently. The way she is coping with this loss will surely destroy what is left of our marriage. Ever since the day our daughter died, she's been detached from reality. I suppose in a way, we all were, but my wife was different. She couldn't or wouldn't come to terms with the fact that Dorothy was gone. Julia didn't sit in her bed crying for hours, nor did she spend every waking moment surrounded by photo albums or Dorothy's clothes. She didn't cry at all when the cops called to inform us that Dorothy was run over by a pickup truck while hitchhiking to a rock concert. Julia and I cremated our daughter. Yes, Julia insisted on it. I wish I never agreed. Now, she carries the urn around. She talked to it as if it was a real person.
Comfortable?
She murmured as she strapped it into the baby seat of our car just the other week. I watched her through the rearview mirror and my skin crawled. Needless to say, after that I stopped going out with my wife. I could see people talking about her everywhere we went. They would point her out silently and whisper among themselves. I used to feel bad for my wife, but now this routine is getting on my nerves. I am heartbroken and exhausted pretending our daughter is alive. So that night, I decided to put a stop to this. I ordered food and set the table in Valentine's theme. When Julia came downstairs and noticed all the red balloons and heart-shaped candles, I saw her eyes dazzle up. After all these gloomy days, I finally felt my wife noticing me.
Did you do this all by yourself?
Yep. Happy Valentine's Day, dear.
I went close to her. She was holding the urn to her chest. I said in a soft voice,
I know, Julia. We're going through a tough phase and you're in no mood to celebrate, but we need to live. Dorothy would have wanted us to celebrate tonight. Let's sit down and have a proper dinner, okay?
She gave me a surprised look, like I've said something weird.
Is it okay if Dorothy eats with us too?
God, Julia, please, let's not do this tonight.
Do what?
At this point, I was secretly hoping that tonight will be the night when things go back to normal.
How will Dorothy eat with us?
I asked and the tiring, sad voice repeated. For a moment, the room was enveloped in stunned silence. Then Julia spoke.
Like she does every other night.
She sat down on the table and put the urn right next to her dinner plate. Just think about it. Candles were lit. Valentine's Day dinner it was, and I was sitting with my wife and the ashes of my dead daughter at the same table. But still, I kept calm. At least she has agreed to eat dinner at the table and not in her room after days. It still progresses. Slowly, she will accept. It takes time to heal, I know that. But then she started talking to the urn.
Look how romantic Daddy is, Dorothy. Yeah, he is glad that you could join us. I'll set up a plate for you. Wait,
Julia, please. You don't have to go through this every night.
pass me the mashed potato. Dorothy wants some.
As she started cutting the steak, disregarding that I existed, I finally lost it.
Why can't you just talk to me, huh? Dorothy is dead. We lost our daughter to a car crash, Julia. Accept it. She's dead. Stop this insanity. It's hurting both of us. This is not healthy. Why can't you see that?
Caught in a fit of rage, I grasped the tablecloth and pulled it towards me, sending the dishes crashing to the floor. Dorothy's urn, sitting atop one of the plates, succumbed to the same fate. It fell on the hard concrete and shattered.
Dory!
My wife screamed, leaping to her feet and dashing around the dining table.
No, baby, no!
Tears rolled down my eyes, realizing what damage I had done. Amidst the porcelain shards and utensils, the urn lay cracked in half, its lid nowhere to be found. Dorothy's ashes were scattered in those broken pieces. Julia landed knees first on the shards, the porcelain crunching under her weight. Nothing could have prepared me for what she did next. I watched in horror as my frantic wife snatched one half of the urn and stuck her tongue out to lick it, her fingers desperately searching for the remains left on the floor. She swept her hands across the ground, cutting her skin up in the process, and shoved the whole lot in her mouth, her eyes rolling back inside her head. I wanted to vomit. No, I wanted to run. My heart was pounding at 10 times its normal rate, threatening to leap out of my throat. My skin was clammy and my vision blurred, but not enough to stop me from seeing the monster that was my wife, stuffing ashes, blood, and porcelain shards down her throat.
Julia?
She slowly turned her head towards me, and a sick smile appeared on her face. Her bleeding mouth with ashes smearing on her white teeth gave me chills.
She will be with me now, forever.
And went back to doing what she was doing. I ran to her and tried my best to pull her away. She kicked in the air and screamed.
No, baby! Don't be scared. Mommy's here.
I pleaded with Julia to stop this madness, but she didn't. I somehow dragged her away and locked her in our bedroom. She kept banging on the door until the paramedics arrived. It's been 3 years now since Julia has been put in a mental institution. Every Valentine's Day, I go to visit my wife with a bouquet of red roses. I will go this year as well, but I know she won't talk to me. She only talks to herself now. The doctor says she sometimes imitates Dorothy's voice and pretends to be her own daughter, as if she has these dual personalities. She has completely lost it, and I know I'm not getting my family back. So, if you have someone special to spend your Valentine's Day with, you better make it memorable for them. Life has never been kind to the hearts filled with love. How much do you know about Japanese traditions? This is a question I ask everyone who hears my story, more than anything else, so that they know what I'm talking about. Why we do what we do, so that they understand the dimension of the mistake that my friends and I made that day. The day we opened a door we shouldn't have opened. Let me put it in context. Surely you know Candyman or Bloody Mary, right? The game to summon Hanako-san is quite similar. To start the game, you must go into the third bathroom on the third floor of the school. When you are standing in front of the door, you must say Hanako-san 3 times in a row. After doing so, you will hear a girl's voice telling you that she is inside the restroom. After that, you will hear someone flush the toilet, and at that moment, Hanako-san will disappear. On the other hand, there is a possibility that before you flush the toilet, a demonic hand will grab your head and pull you into the toilet together with Hanako-san, condemning you to a fate worse than death. There are some other rules, of course. It is said that you can see Hanako-san in the toilet as a little girl with a red skirt and black hair. It is also said that Hanako-san will not kill you if you are the top girl in your class. Whatever the rules are, one thing is clear. In Japan, it is normal that summoning Hanako-san, whether she appears or not, is a necessary rite when you are new in school.
Aiko, are you sure you want to do this? I must, otherwise I won't be integrated as part of the group. But what if Hanako-san catches you? Hey, don't worry, May, I'll be fine. Everyone goes through this. Hanako-san doesn't even exist. Yeah, you're right. You'll be fine, Aiko. You're here, Aiko. Yes, I'm ready. Great. Do you know the rules? Yes, I learned them. Excellent. Let's go in together.
We all went to the bathroom together, but when we were getting to the third door, the other girls stayed behind, and I fearfully went into the bathroom and sat on the toilet, closing the door in the process.
You can do it, Aiko. We trust you. Okay, I can do this. Hanako-san. Hanako-san. Hanako-san.
With these words said, the bathroom went into a huge silence. It was as if the cubicle had been transported to a different dimension, totally silent. I could hear nothing but my breathing. I felt that in the bathroom, I was alone.
Girls, nothing happened. Can I come out? Hey, tell me something. Hanako-san didn't show up. I should go, right? Please, answer me!
I didn't know what was going on, but out of nowhere, I started to hear a lot of banging on the door. My friends weren't there. What was going on? From one second to the next, the door slowly opened and the source of the sound was revealed.
You scared me! I'm sorry, it was so tempting. We should have filmed it. Right, Fang? I didn't want to be a part of this. It's disrespectful. We're sorry, Aiko. Come on, let's get out of here. What was that? It's coming from next door. Let me see. No! Fang, no, it's dangerous.
When the door opened, we all screamed with fright and fell backward in fear. It was Hanota. She was just standing next to us, laughing. Her face was totally deformed. Her skin was gray and her eyes were wild.
Ah! Hanota! No!
Terrified, May and I ran to the door, screaming in despair as Feng stared at her friend's body. We banged on the door as hard as we could, but it was locked. What was happening? Were we locked in? Suddenly, we heard the sound of the toilet in the second cubicle. It rattled non-stop as if it was stuck.
Fang! Oh no!
I ran desperately to the source of the sound, and when we arrived, there it was. Fang was drowning in the toilet. I tried to pull her head out, but I couldn't. It was as if something invisible was holding her head, choking her. I backed away, scared, until suddenly, May said something very strange.
You don't feel like disrespecting me anymore, do you? What? May, what are you saying?
As soon as I turned around, I fell to the floor in terror. That wasn't May. That was a young girl with black hair and a red skirt. That was Hanako-san.
Little Aiko, you shouldn't have provoked me. You shouldn't play with things that you don't understand. I didn't do anything. Everyone calls you. I didn't know I was disrespecting you. Oh, but you do.
Calling me for such trivial things as a game? That'll be your first and last mistake with me.
I kept my eyes closed for a few seconds, but nothing happened. In fear, I opened them. I was standing in front of the third bathroom door, about to perform the ritual.
Hanako-san.
None of my friends were here. It was all a dream.
Hanako-san.
No, it didn't feel like a dream. It was all very real.
Hanako-san.
It was as if I had been transported to a parallel universe and came back here.
Hanako-san.
At that moment, I realized something terrible. While I was thinking about what was happening, my mouth was saying Hanako-san in front of the door.
Hanako-san.
I couldn't stop saying it. I tried to run to get out of there, but nothing worked.
Hanako-san. Hanako-san. Hanako-san.
It was as if my body was not mine, as if something was controlling it to say Hanako-san in front of the door.
Hanako-san.
Suddenly, my body stopped and stopped saying things. I just froze in front of the bathroom door.
Hanako-san. 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 Hanako-san.
It began to open slowly, and from inside, I heard a tetric voice.
I'm here.
Before I could react, a terrifying hand came out from inside the toilet and grabbed my head, trying to pull me inside the toilet, trying to drown me. I used all the resistance I could, but nothing worked. I was exhausted. I was swallowing so much water, I couldn't do anything. I alone had entered a game I was never going to win. I had provoked something I didn't even understand, just to make other girls like me. Desperate, I was losing the last of my breath, when as if nothing had happened, it was all over. The hand had stopped. I ran out of the bathroom, pushing the door, and on the other side, my friends were there, scared.
Hey, Aiko! Are you okay? Girl, what's wrong? Did you see Hanako-san? Did she spare your life?
Overwhelmed by the situation, the only thing I could do was cry with all my strength. When I told my friends everything, they thought I was playing a joke, but after seeing my face, they believed me. They were all terrified and promised themselves never to do anything like that again. When I got to class, the teacher came up to me with a big smile and congratulated me for obtaining the highest grade in the class. Terrified, I received the grade and looked at my friends, who understood what was going on in my head. Hanako-san spares the lives of the girls who get the highest grade. If I hadn't have done so well on this exam, who knows what would have happened to me. For as long as I can remember, I have always been a person who cherishes my freedom. While other people my age were happy with the comfort of living with their parents, I fantasized about living on my own from a very young age. While some people fantasized about dream jobs, fame, and money, all I wanted was to stand on my own 2 feet. My father passed away when I was very young, so from then on, it was just me and my mother. We had no family or contact with anyone else. It was just the two of us. This would normally form a great bond between me and her, but to tell the truth, the opposite happened, as she was a monster. My mother always mistreated me and forbid me to have friends or talk to women. I'm not going to lie to you. I had a very complicated childhood, but luckily, everything was over, because when I was 21 years old, I was moving to a new house. My problems started in the middle of the move. You would think that with such a bad relationship with my mother, I wouldn't talk to her anymore the moment I stepped foot out of the house, but it wasn't like that. Growing up with her, it was very hard for me to lose contact. I wanted to keep her in my life, but she was acting very strangely and unnaturally, even for her.
Mom, you didn't have to come with me. I could have invited you after I moved out.
Oh, but I did. I could never leave my only son alone.
Okay. Thanks, Mom.
You're welcome, son. You know I'll always be there for you.
Whatever I lived through with her, my mother never made me feel this way. It was as if she had stopped being my mother and had become a character in a horror movie. Always staring at me with a creepy smile, constantly moving her fingers as if she was up to something. She was making me feel very uncomfortable. Maybe she was having a psychotic break. When the move was done, she had to go back to work so I could finally have some peace and enjoy being alone. I laid down, closed my eyes, and without rearranging the furniture, I fell asleep. My sleep in my new home was suddenly interrupted. I didn't know the sounds of this house yet, but I remember that was the intruder alarm. I approached the front door, but it was locked. No one had entered. Was it failing?
Hello, we just noticed that your alarm went on. Is everything okay?
Yeah, it was a mistake.
Please tell me your password.
Apple 3223.
Thank you.
As soon as I cut the call, another strange noise caught my attention. This time, it was coming from my room. Had some boxes fallen down. I thought about calling the operator again, but it didn't make sense. I knew I was being paranoid. I've never lived alone. Strange noises and unwarranted fear is normal, right? I nervously walked to my room, and to my surprise, my fears had been justified. Someone was crouched down next to the bed with his back towards me. I was about to quickly call 911, but that person revealed her face.
Mom? What are you doing here?
What a nice house you picked out for us. This will be our room.
What? Mom, I'm gonna live here by myself. How did you get in?
You will never live alone. A son always needs his mother. You'll never get rid of me. You'll never get rid of me. You will never get rid of me.
I didn't know what was going on, but that wasn't my mother. I ran out of the room and closed the door. Luckily, I still had the keys in my pocket, so while whoever that person was banging on the door, I managed to lock it. After that, I just walked backward and, terrified, stood there watching the door take more and more knocks until suddenly, it opened.
Mom knows better.
Ah!
Hey, you woke up. Are you okay? What happened?
Mom? I'm home. You have no idea what a nightmare I had. I dreamt that I moved out, but a demon version of you replaced you, and her face started to melt, and... Oh my god, what a real and terrible nightmare.
Oh, sweetie, stay calm. That will never happen. You will never move out.
What? What am I doing here? I was really moving out. It wasn't a dream.
You see, son, I called the realtor. You can't move in. You need someone to take care of you after your accident.
Accident? What?
I'm really sorry about what happened. The fact that I was driving makes it so much worse. But I'll make up for my mistake, my baby. I'll take care of you forever. A child always needs its mother.
But when I recover, I can just go, won't I?
I think you're still in shock, silly. You're missing the point. You'll never get better. Not as long as I'm alive.
Shocked, I couldn't scream or fight. I just stared at the wall without understanding what was happening. Eventually, I understood that my mom was right. I was never going to be able to live alone. I was never going to be able to be calm. There were no relatives to rescue me, and we lived in the middle of nowhere. No one could hear my screams. Most of the time, I was either dozed or crying. It was really a dead end. Today, I have something similar to a normal life. I finally live alone. But that cost me more than 30 years of my life. My mother is no longer with us, but I still see her in my nightmares. Every day I dream that I'm young again. I dream that I can live a normal life. But she is always back, ready to torment me until the end of my life. Starting an OnlyFans was a spur-of-the-moment decision I made. I was unemployed, drowning in debt. This is why I cared for the money so much that I was ready to do anything for it. It was Friday night. I had put on a cute costume and was all set to go live with my OnlyFans. Suddenly, I got a DM from a client.
Respond if you want a quick $1,000.
Lucifer333. I clicked on the profile. Just a username I didn't recognize. No picture, no details, and I couldn't remember if I had interacted with him before. I don't usually respond to DMs, and I was busy getting ready for a live stream, but that amount of money got my attention. I asked.
What's the request?
The reply came immediately.
I want you to draw something.
I stared at the message for a second.
What? You're joking.
No, I'm serious. Draw me a picture. $1,000, no joke. Trust me.
I'd been an adult content creator for 5 years. Honestly, I've gotten a lot over that period, but this was maybe the weirdest request I've ever gotten. $1,000 just for some stupid drawing. This guy intrigued me.
I don't draw. I'm not an artist.
You don't need to be. I just want you to draw this. Do it and the money will be yours.
Fine. What do I have to draw?
This.
He sent an image attached. I expected it to be some explicit photo, but once I opened it, I was surprised. It was a scanned image of a page from a very old book, a big circle with a pentagram inside, and a big blue eye right in the middle. I'd never seen anything like it.
What is this?
No answer. I waited, kept staring at the image, and then my eyes glanced up at the message chain, at the promised $1,000. Probably 8 streaming sessions worth of work, and if this is his kink, who am I to judge?
You just want me to draw this? Like, on paint or something?
No, on your floor, with chalk.
You sure this isn't a joke?
No, it's not.
$50 was credited to my account. This guy was a freaking trip, but he wasn't kidding.
I don't have chalk.
No, need it now.
It never fails. When the mood strikes, the mood strikes. They got to get off right away. I rummaged through the desk next to my cam setup, pushed aside random things, makeup, papers, and my toys. I found a pencil. I looked at the hardwood floor in my apartment. No way that was going to work. Then I remembered and found my old purse on the floor in my closet, and inside it, a thick black Sharpie. I tested it on the floor. Bingo. I messaged him back.
Will a marker work?
Again, the reply was immediate.
Yes, as long as I can see it. Draw big.
Calm down, my guy. Horniness does strange things to a man. Well, fine. It wouldn't take me more than a minute.
Okay, drawing now.
I pulled up the pic he sent me on my phone and kneeled on the floor next to my bed, pulled aside the carpet, put the Sharpie to the hard wood, and began to draw. It showed up pretty well. I turned down the lights and took a photo of it with a flash, then sent it to Lucifer333.
How's this?
No reply.
Huh?
Still nothing. Then my phone buzzed. $1,000 credited to my account. He then replied,
Yes! You did so well!
Bloody hell. I just made more money than I did in the last month of camming.
I'm glad you like it.
This guy was probably pleasuring himself to a circle I just drew in Sharpie on my dirty apartment floor right now, I thought. Thinking we were done, I moved to start my live stream, but then he surprised me.
Want to make 5K tonight?
What? You mean 3K more?
No, I mean 5K more.
Okay, duck the live stream. This guy could pay my bills for life.
Anything for you, Lucifer.
Awesome. I just need you to say something and videotape it.
I'm not gonna lie, This request was another curveball.
What do you want me to say, Daddy?
I replied to spice things up a bit. Okay, it was a shot in the dark, but a pretty substantial portion of my clients like it, and I kind of like it too. Suddenly, a message popped up. I wrinkled my brow reading it, because it looked like complete nonsense.
Rege Satanas, Ave Satanas, Hail Satanas. Say it 3 times.
I started thinking about this. Maybe this dude is into gothic stuff. I mean, people are into weird things, and this wasn't my first time dealing with it. But still, something felt off. This was weird. Another message snapped me out of it.
Please, I need it.
Another $500 credited to my account.
That's just for you. I'll give you 5K more.
Man, he is desperate. I couldn't say no anymore. I started the recording and began saying the lines.
Rege Satanas, Ave Satanas, Hail Satanas. Rege Satanas, Ave Satanas, Hail Satanas.
As I got done with the 3rd time, my night lamp exploded. The power went out and I stood in the darkness in front of my laptop. A shiver ran down my spine as my room suddenly got too cold. I messaged the guy.
What is all this? What did you make me do?
But he didn't reply. My head began to feel dizzy. My stomach hurt like something was trying to come out of me. I rushed to the bathroom, but fell on the floor even before reaching it. My eyes rolled into my head, and a stroke of bile hit my throat. As I vomited, I saw in my inner vision I was floating in an infinite space filled with nothing but fire. The writhing flame touched my skin and started burning it. I could smell the smoky flesh and felt excruciating pain. It was like I was thrown into an incinerator to burn alive. I wanted to scream, but instead of voice, molten lava came out of my mouth. The fire was eating me inside out. Suddenly, the face of my mom flashed in front of my eyes, and I screamed.
Dear Lord, save me!
Everything went black after that. I woke up hours later on the floor. My skin had red, burnt wounds. My head was throbbing, and no matter how much I tried, I couldn't get up. Suddenly, my eyes went to the floor, and I saw a curled up piece of fleshy discharge, reeking like death. What the hell came out of my mouth? I was beyond terrified. I somehow got up and went to my laptop. The guy was still there and had sent me tons of messages.
Did you do it? Send me the audio clip. Where did you go? Hello? Don't you want my money?
But I had enough. I blocked him and went offline. For the next few days, I suffered from fever, sudden vomiting, and severe headaches. A week later, when I finally got well, I rubbed off the symbol he made me draw. I also deleted the recording from my phone. Not just that, I even did some research on the symbol. What I found gave me chills. It was a symbol to summon the dark spirits. Basically, the freak made me perform a satanic occult ritual in my own house without my knowledge. Those out there, storming your life through the world of the internet, I only have one thing to say to you. No matter what anyone says, learn to set boundaries in your life online, or else, God knows where will you end up.
Hey, my name is Elodie, and believe me when I tell you I would do anything for my kids. I know all mothers say that, but I had a chance to prove it at 7-Eleven. It all happened one afternoon when I went with my kids to 7-Eleven. Their father abandoned us when I was pregnant with the twins, so I had to take them everywhere when my parents couldn't take care of them. That day, the boys had not gone to school because one of them was sick, and I suspected that the sister might get sick and infect her classmates. When we arrived at 7-Eleven, let's just say he didn't look sick anymore. Mom, I want ice cream.
Mom, if he eats ice cream, I want ice cream too.
It's not fair. I'm sick.
Liar, you're not sick. Look how well you are.
Guys.
Mom, Claudette is bothering me. Tell her I'm sick.
Don't call me by my full name.
I'll call you whatever I want to, Claudette.
Guys!
You're so mean.
I'm sick and you still yell at me?
Kids, stop it. As soon as we get out of here, I'll buy you ice cream, okay? But only if you behave yourselves.
Okay, Mom.
Kids, am I right? When I turned around, a man was behind me. He had a generous face and a friendly smile. His eyes were wide open, and waiting for a response, he froze, staring at me.
Oh, I'm sorry. You scared me. Yes, they are terrible.
They're twins, aren't they? Hey, you should behave yourselves and not get Mom in trouble.
Yes, sir. They seem out of control, but they're very good children. Well, we should get going. A pleasure, sir.
My pleasure. Do you come here often?
Sometimes. Have a nice day.
Very uncomfortable, I left with my children from that section. That man was really awkward.
Didn't you like that man, Mom?
I think the man liked Mom.
No way. Don't talk with people like that. That man was a creep.
The next few minutes were normal. I didn't see the man anymore, and by the time I got to the checkout line, I had forgotten all about him. A few seconds after I arrived, the man stood behind me. Nice day, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
A little annoyed, I ignored him. You know, I'm new to the neighborhood and I really know few places to shop. I'm a very lonely man who can't have children, so it's a pleasure to see friendly people like you.
My mom thinks you're a...
Alphonse! Ignore him, sir. He's just a boy. I hope you can adapt to the neighborhood as soon as possible.
I have to admit that his little speech gave me some pity, but I was still very uncomfortable with his presence. I wanted him to get away as soon as possible. No problem. I understand that children can behave very badly. Sometimes, don't you wish they were dead? Hearing those words, my blood ran cold. I turned around, furious.
What did you say?
Oh, calm down, dear. It was just a metaphor. No one would want these angels to die, right?
Sir, you are a sick man. Don't ever speak to me or my children again. Do you understand?
Of course. Still smiling, as if what I had to say had not affected him. I am sorry for having such a big imagination. I will not bother you anymore. Still furious, I was about to turn away, but something caught my attention, and I had to tell him.
Wait a minute. Is your little bag empty? You've been here for almost 20 minutes and you haven't bought anything? Besides, what are you doing in line? Are you following us?
At this point, I was already screaming. Not only did I not care if anyone heard us, but I wanted them to. Oh, I guess I didn't get anything, did I? That means I don't have to wait in line to leave. Have a nice day. And with that, he simply left. When I went to turn it off, the cashier offered me to go with someone from security, which I accepted, and a man escorted us to the car. When we arrived, the security man greeted us and I opened my car door. I knew nothing was wrong, that the man was gone, but I still felt very uncomfortable. I put all my shopping bags into my SUV, and before I left, my son asked me to close it.
Al, it's not a good time for this.
But you promised me, Mom. Please, let me close the back door.
You promised, Mom. Don't be a liar.
Ugh. All right, but make it quick. I'll go start the engine.
Yay!
While Al was closing the trunk, I was looking at ice cream shop locations on my cell phone with Claudette. I knew it wasn't the best time, but if I didn't do it now, she was going to yell at me while I was driving, and that was going to be a problem.
Mom, are you going to get lemon ice cream?
Al? When did you get here?
Long ago. I just finished closing the door.
But honey, the trunk is still open.
What?
You didn't close it all the way and it opened. Let me close it.
After closing the trunk, I started the SUV and we left. We were going to go to an ice cream shop a few blocks away and order ice cream to eat at home, but something caught my attention.
Kids, what are you looking at back there?
Mom, there's something moving under the doggy padding.
Is it a rat?
What? Kids, get out of there!
Oh, I'm busted.
Ah!
I couldn't believe my eyes. The man from before with the maniacal, terrifying smile was in the car.
My children tried to run away, but they were both wearing seatbelts.
What are you doing here? I'm calling the police. Get out of here now!
No, don't stop the car. The kids want to eat ice cream.
You're, leave him alone! He's just a kid.
I know, isn't that lovely? I love kids. I could never do anything bad to little Al. Please let me go. Hey, how about instead of eating ice cream, let's go straight home? I'd love to get to know them better.
Listen to me, you psycho. If you think I'm taking you to my house, you're too—
No! You listen to me! If you ever yell at me or disrespect me again, I will use this knife to open the child like a fish. Do you understand?
Please, don't do anything to him.
No. I wouldn't do anything to him. I'm sorry I got angry like that. What's your name?
Elodie.
Listen to me, Elodie. I'm not gonna lie to you. I like your children. Not romantically, of course.
Mom, I'm scared.
Take it easy, Claudette. Everything will be all right.
Indeed. Look, I'm not gonna hurt you or your children. I just want you to give me little Al.
What?
Oh, come on. I've always wanted a child, and nobody wants to have one with me. They won't even let me adopt. You have two. You can give me one. I promise I'll take care of it.
I won't give you any of my children. Leave us alone or you'll pay.
What am I gonna pay for? How can you be so selfish? You know what? I warned you not to disrespect me. Now I'll be left with one child and you with none. Filled with rage, the psychopath lunged at Claudette. Terrified, I did the only thing I could do to save her. In the last few minutes, I had driven to a longer, uninhabited road, so I was able to increase the speed of the SUV. I did it so that at this moment, when everything came to its worst, I could do this. I had made it. My children were safe. But as I looked out the window, I saw the psychopath was not only moving, but also standing up.
Oh no, you're not standing up anymore.
Unable to control my anger, I ran over the man at full speed. After that, he didn't move anymore. Soon after, the police stopped me until they could figure out what was going on. Since this happened recently, I still don't know if I can go to jail for what happened, but I have no regrets. Shortly after, I found out that the man I hit had charges of sexual abuse. The police told me that there probably won't be any problems, but whatever the outcome, I'm happy to make this world a better place for my children.
At the beginning of my career, I taught English in a local high school. I had just gotten married and was one of the youngest teachers in that school. It was my first day, and I was going to my class when I saw two boys bullying a girl.
Stop it! Stop it!
She screamed so loud that everyone went quiet. Other teachers came out of their classes, students gathered in the corridor, and all eyes were on her. The boys who were bullying stepped back in fear. To take control of the situation, I rushed to them.
Boys, go to your classes now, and make sure you two see me with your parents after school.
They ran away. Everyone got back to their job, and I walked to my class. I started writing my name on the board to introduce myself to my first batch of students when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around and saw that same girl walk into my class. She sat down on the last bench, and I continued with the class. The day went well. A few days later, when I had finally settled down with my new job and new place, a weird thing started happening. Someone left small notes stuck to my car windshield. Nothing was written on them, only a picture of a boy and a girl standing side by side holding hands. The boy had the same hair and clothes as mine, but the girl wore a wedding dress. No matter how weird the notes were, I brushed them off as a prank by a student. By the fifth note, I got a message. The sender of these notes wrote,
Why don't you notice me?
I quickly looked around. All the kids were leaving. Some were walking home in groups. Suddenly, my eyes spotted this big bushy tree on the opposite side of the street. The girl from the first day was standing there. She had this big smile on her face. Her eyes were wide open. It felt so creepy the way she was watching me. I realized she was the one sending me all these love notes. Damn, I think she developed a crush on me. I was a married man and wanted no trouble with a teenage girl. So, I curled the note into a ball, threw it on the gutter, and got in my car. The girl's smile faded as she watched me drive off. I didn't tell my wife because I thought she might misinterpret the situation. The next day, I took off and spent the entire day with my wife. We went to the club, danced, and got drunk. We had a wild night after that. The next day was a Sunday. I went to buy some groceries at the local market. My wife went along. We were picking up apples when I heard a woman call out to my wife.
Rhonda, how have you been? Hello, Mrs. Dempsey.
She introduced me to this woman who had happened to be the mayor's wife. I went to shake hands with her when that girl from school marched behind her.
You must be the new English teacher. Pamela said you helped her stand up to her bullies.
I awkwardly smiled, and the girl watched my wife from tip to toe with a blank face. My wife could sense the tension on my face, so I told the woman it was nothing huge, just my duty as a teacher.
Why didn't you come yesterday, Mr. Tamara?
As shocked as we all were by the question, my discomfort grew further.
I just need some rest. Thanks for asking, Pamela.
Will you be at school tomorrow?
Yes, I will.
She walked away with her mom, and my wife and I finished the rest of shopping. Once we got in the car, my wife asked what happened to that girl. I told her everything except for the love notes. She nodded her head and said that the girl was weird. She didn't like the way Pamela checked her out. The next day, I had just finished the class and was going to the teacher's room for lunch when I heard my name.
Mr. Tamara?
I turned around and the girl was standing right behind me, almost giving me a heart attack.
I brought cookies for you. I tried for the first time.
Thanks, but I can't take them, Pamela.
Why not? It's for you.
I don't like cookies. Thanks, anyway.
Her face shook down and she got quiet. I stood there awkwardly and then turned around to walk back.
Did your wife tell you to stay away from me?
What?
Why don't you understand?
What are you talking about?
You have to leave your wife. She's coming between us.
My patience drew the line there. I looked her in the eye and said in a strict tone,
I'm your teacher, Pamela. You better remember that or I will call your parents.
Her eyes burned in anger. She ground her teeth like a wolf, then left me alone. I made up my mind that today, once I get home, I will tell my wife about this psycho girl. But the principal held a meeting on an upcoming exam, so I had to stay a little late. Once I finally got off work, I rushed home. As I arrived on the front porch, I found the door half open. I entered the house, and it was in drop-dead silent.
Rhonda, I'm home.
I might have called out a little loud. Suddenly, I heard whimpering sobs coming from the kitchen. I followed it and saw Pamela was holding a knife at Rhonda, and she was barely trying not to cry. Our eyes met, and I realized the gravity of the situation. I started talking to Pamela.
Pamela, put down the knife.
Why? So you can ditch me for her?
Okay. I'll divorce her and be with you.
Will you?
I nodded my head up and down, saying,
Yes.
Pamela slowly backed off to come towards me. When she was close, I jumped to grab the knife away, and she panicked. I got stabbed in the shoulder. When the paramedics were taking me away on the stretcher, I heard Rhonda crying and Pamela ranting to the cops like a maniac.
He will live, right?
The lady cops grabbed her and started taking her away. I could hear her screams until the ambulance doors closed. She was kicking in the air, screaming at the top.
Mr. Tamara, I swear, I didn't mean to hurt you. Please, don't hate me.
I was discharged after a month. I wanted to quit my job and shift to another place, but Rhonda stopped me. She told me that Pamela was sent to a juvenile mental institution and her family went with her. I still get nightmares where I see Pamela standing next to my bed, leaning over my face and saying,
Why don't you notice me?